This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with James O'Brien.
Good morning. Here's a funny one, right? Just looking at the news. By the way, it's Thursday. I must keep reminding myself of that because it feels a little bit like Friday for those of us who are going to finish work for a long weekend today. Not to make light, of course, of the religious festival that Christians will be celebrating. And in the next hour of the programme, I think we will take one of our probably incorrectly rare strolls into religious territory, not least because this week's Full Disclosure features an interview with the Archbishop of Canterbury, which I think might have affected me more than many of the, or almost all of the interviews I've ever done before. I shall tell you later. On a rather lighter note, why do you think Morrison's is in trouble at the moment? Because it has a hot cross bun flavoured what? What have they infused with the flavour of hot cross buns and so inflamed supposedly some Christian sensibilities, although this usually means ringing up a one-man band who's desperate to get their name in the paper and have set up an organisation called something like Christian Reality or something like that, and you're working on the Daily Telegraph and you find a hot cross bun infused, I don't know, carrot or a hot cross bun infused. In this case, it's cheese. Morrison's are selling a hot cross bun flavoured cheese. And they've managed to find someone to complain about this and claim that it's undermining the sanctity and the profundity of the Easter festival. So that might come up in the second hour. Mystery hour at 12, all being well, God willing, if you pardon the segue from a religion. Anyway, got mystery hour at 12. And for your delectation on today's programme, I kid you not, two of the funniest political announcements I think we've had in a very, very long time. One is not really political because the person concerned isn't really a politician, but technically they could be described as such, and the announcement is frankly hilarious. The other one is a fully paid up member of Parliament, and they have managed to get themselves into a frankly almighty pickle. In fact, I'll give you a clue if you follow me on social media. Or indeed, if you follow political matters with a desire to find something funny on social media, one of them has managed to get themselves into an almighty pickled egg, no less, for reasons that we may explore a little further later in the programme. But let us begin. Let us begin, actually, by sympathising with Angela Rayner, who's managed to turn up at a Labour Party event today, Britain's Future, where they launched their local election campaign, about which, due to rules of purdah, I'm frightened of saying anything else. But Angela's managed to turn up wearing a bright red jacket, standing in front of a bright red background. I don't know if you saw the early days of GBBs, when Andrew Neil managed to somehow appear wearing a dark black jacket in a dark black background. He looked a bit like the early days of Red Dwarf, when you had a sort of disembodied head floating around the screen without any apparent anchoring or purpose. It was Holly, wasn't it? It was Norman Lovett that played the part. And anyway, Angela Rayner falling into a similar. Oh, hang on! Breaking news: Yvonne says that the hot cross bun flavoured cheese is delicious. Can you alert Thomas Watts, please? The hot cross bun flavoured cheese that Morrison's is now selling is delicious. Listen, one swallow does not a summer make any more than one Yvonne does a full and frank assessment of actually, I quite like the sound of a hot cross bun flavoured cheese. And well done to Ruby for reminding us that Jesus actually said, "Blessed are the cheesemakers." 7 minutes after 10 is the time. Let's have a little flavour of what might be to come on the programme later. But I want to begin with a story that I occasionally let myself do this, and I'm not going to lie to you. You don't always come with me. It doesn't always work. But stories that actually just make me go, well, why don't we care more about this? But today's not quite in that category, because a lot of people do care passionately about the state of our rivers and our seas. I do. But it's very much one of those stories that only really gets the blood pumping on the days when it's in the news. It's what you really want is an issue that people are angry about. Or no, angry is the wrong word, because that makes us all sound a bit gammony. You want an issue that makes us all really concerned all the time, not just when the media presses the button marked concern or marked anger. There is something, and the story about the boat race this week, I don't know if you saw it, should really have focused the mind. The boat race, the actual boat race, which, is probably the closest that most of the population ever gets to water sports, the boat race is that have been warned not to throw their cocks into the water, matron, because of the detection of E. coli in the River Thames. I have swum in the River Thames. I swam in the River Thames not that long ago, and I don't mean up by where is it? Where did King John sign the Magna Carta, Keith? Come on, mate. Jake, you're a historian. Where did Runnymede? So I used to go swimming at Runnymede during the pandemic when we were allowed to. I'd take the old kayak up to Runnymede and start paddling around there. But I've actually swum in the bit of the River Thames where the boat race goes. You're allowed to. What you've got to do, I will get to the topic eventually, but it's one of those days. You've got to look out for the slack tide. Did you know this? So you know the boys in the water. So a slack tide is when the buoy in the water is upright, face like up. So if it's facing that way, this is obviously not something you can see unless you're watching later on the YouTube recording of the entire program. Hi, YouTubers. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit those likes. Ding, ding, is it? Ring that bell or something? Anyway, so it can be going like that, which means the tide is going that way, or it can be going like that, which means the tide is going that way, or it can be like that, which means the tide is slack. And if the tide is slack, then the little bit of the River Thames near where my mate lives, you can jump in and have a bit of a swim. I won't be doing that again. If you can't throw your cocks into the water because of the E. coli in the system, then I highly advise that you don't go for a sort of nice, refreshing dip yourself when the weather gets hot. So that story focuses the mind a bit. But not enough. This is the thing I find extraordinary. Water companies in England have discharged... Just stop, actually. Not if you're driving or if you're doing something busy. Water companies in England have discharged, and if you do it in hours rather than quantity to start with, in the last 12 months, 3.6. What am I going to say next? 1,000? 3.6 hundred? 300? So how many hours did water companies in England spend treating, I beg your pardon, pumping raw sewage into our rivers and seas last year? 3.6 million hours. 3.6 million hours. If you're thinking, as I did briefly this morning, hang on a minute, there aren't 3.6 million hours in a year, then remember that if 10 companies are pumping sewage into our rivers and our seas at the same time for an hour, then that equals 10. I don't know that anyone except me needs this explaining, but I will explain it nonetheless. That means that there were 10 hours. Therefore, the number of hours in a year is not relevant to the number of hours that water companies may have spent during that year pumping untreated sewage, raw sewage. Do you see what I mean about the words not reaching the places that they should reach? It's extraordinary. Raw sewage, which is shocking amounts of ordure coming out of people, being discharged into our rivers and our seas for 3.6 million hours. It's pumping, it is discharging, it is not seeping or leaking or escaping, it is being deliberately and consciously pumped into our rivers and our seas for 3.6 million hours in a single year. Right, stop. What are you thinking? I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, what? He's gone mad. Or, what? This is absolutely outrageous. This is truly but why? Why weren't we angry about this 20 minutes ago? Don't phone me to tell me that you were. I'll come to you in a minute. Why weren't we angry about this 20 minutes ago? Why didn't we go to bed last night just inconceivably disturbed by the simple statistics? Before I even tell you about what's going on at Thames Water financially, the simple statistics in place here should really have us all taking to the streets or marching for the hills or whatever it is that you do when you're very, very angry. Here's another number. A record number of migrants have crossed the Channel this year, piling further pressure on Rishi Sunak to deliver on his Rwanda policy. Actually, I've got three. I've got another political intervention to share with you later that is up there with the stupidest of all time. No prizes for guessing who it involves. So 338 human beings crossed the Channel yesterday in 7 boats, taking the total to 4,664. I know this sounds silly, but could you imagine how the Conservative Party and their client journalists, the people who are still cheering for Boris Johnson, the people who told you that Brexit was a good idea, the people that gave Liz Truss a free pass into Parliament, and the people who are currently obsessing about small boats while failing to do anything meaningful about them, could you imagine what the country's coverage would look like if it could be proved that the 4,664 human beings who made their way here in perilous circumstances yesterday were responsible for the amount of sewage being discharged into our waterways? If you could somehow draw a causal link between the human beings in small boats and the 3.6 million hours in which raw, untreated sewage, literally shocking amounts of sewage, was being pumped into our waterways, I don't believe the story would ever be off the front pages. I don't think it would ever be off the lips of Rishi Sunak or Kemi Badenoch or Jonathan Gullis or whoever gets put up this week to embarrass themselves with a ludicrous inability to grasp the simplest of facts while pursuing the most base of prejudices in the belief that their vote depends upon persuading already corrupted people that their lives are about to be rendered even worse, not by 14 years of Tory rule, but by some poor soul in a dinghy. Could you imagine what the coverage of this would be like? If the coverage of sewage, if the sewage was somehow caused by immigration in general, or by wokeness, or by pronouns, could you imagine what the coverage? And yet, I think the only front page where the story appears today, and possibly the only newspaper in which it appears, is The Guardian. 2023 was the worst year for storm water pollution. Early figures were at 4 million, but we reckon it's going to be closer to about 3.6. So I've got 2 questions for you. One is philosophical or political, and one is personal. I find we're increasingly doing this. We're sort of splitting, peeling the onion on the programme. So do the why of it. Why? Because if it wasn't for Fergal Sharkey, I'm not even sure that the levels of anger and concern that we've reached would have been reached. Fergal's managed to somehow, because he's a great communicator. That's the thing about poets and artists, is that they have powers of communication that the rest of us sometimes lack. And quite unexpectedly, Fergal, one of the greatest songwriters of his or indeed any other generation, has purely from a place of authenticity and concern, born originally, if you don't know, of his love of chalk streams and trout fishing. It's what introduced him to the damage, the impact, the dangers of pumping unprecedented amounts of can I say that? Can I say, really? Okay, poo. Unprecedented amounts of poo into our waterways. If it wasn't for Fergal, I'm not even sure that we would feel the levels of concern and anger. Yes, anger that we feel today. So why? Theoretically, what do we need to live? Shelter, food, water. Theoretically, and I know that our drinking water is for now still drinkable, but you don't have to be a meteorologist or a geologist or any form of scientist to understand that polluting our waterways is a horrific way for human beings to behave. So why does this not? Why haven't we gone after the people who've taken millions of pounds out? Partly because we don't know who they are. I don't know. I want your answers. Why is the state of sewage discharge, why is the story of sewage discharge, in your view, not the biggest story in town? Don't ring me to tell me that something else is more important. Ring me to tell me why you feel this doesn't connect with people in the way that I think logically it should, and in a slightly different universe I believe it could. All right? Hit the numbers now. You will get through. 0345 6060 973. Why do you think something as simply stunning as this statistic, 3.6 million hours in England, spent pumping raw sewage into our rivers and our seas? Why has this not set our world on fire? Do you think, honestly, hand on heart, and don't hold back if you think your answer's a bit obvious, the best thing we can do is assemble as many as possible. And then the second question, which is, you're not in the category I've just described. Something has happened in your life that has made you very alive. Perhaps you were a cox that got tossed into the Thames, and as a consequence of the E. coli presence there, you were incredibly ill. Something in your life, because most of us don't do water sports. Most of us don't engage in the waterways in the way that perhaps you do. So what was it that happened in your life that made you realise just what a national tragedy this is? And I don't think there's much debate about what's caused it. It's the same reason the railways are up the spout. It's because people look upon the things that we rely on and think are somehow infrastructurally immune from the profit imperative. We naively think, oh, well, no, the water won't be treated like any other commodity. Railway travel won't be treated like any other commodity. But that's why these things happen. They are looked at like care homes are now. Anything people look at and think, how can we make money out of that? Stuff the customers. Screw the customers. Absolutely forget about the customers, the consumers, whatever you want to call them. The inmates, the patients, the residents, the drinkers, the travellers. How can we get more money out of this for as long as we possibly can, even as the service that we provide gets worse and worse and worse, the profits that we derive get better and better and better. That's how it happens. But that adds to the first question of why we should be angrier. So why doesn't it land like it should? And why and how did it land with you? Thank you. It's 10:20.
James O'Brien on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
23 minutes after 10. One of the many, well, there are plenty of advantages, but I do like the crowdsourcing element of the programme that the WhatsApp number has now allowed us to engage even more enthusiastically. So Mark and Andy and many others have done the sums for us, and it's about 400 years worth. If it was non-stop, if it was the non-stop discharge of untreated sewage into English rivers and seas, it would take about 400 years for the 2023 amount alone to be released. So, well, you know the questions. Chris is in Wokingham. Chris, what do you reckon?
Hey, James.
Hello, Chris.
It's just a really sad state of affairs, isn't it? Because everyone's so disconnected from it. You turn your tap on at home.
Yeah.
You've got clean water. Everything's fine. Thames Water, Southern Water, whoever your water company is, you pay the bill to them. There's no competition. It is what it is, and it works.
But everybody, I guarantee you, I'm not blowing my own trumpet, but by 10:10 today, every single person listening to this programme would have been in a state of shocked disbelief or head-shaking knowledge and, oh my God, why aren't you talking about this every day, James? This is the single most important thing in my life. There would have been nobody listening to that introduction going, meh. I think I've shocked him into silence. There wouldn't have been. There wouldn't have been.
It's right. I think my default answer would be to say that it's not going to win votes. But then you sort of think about it. Well, surely it could if you actually pledged to invest in that infrastructure and to stop the profit.
How can it not?
Exiting.
So you think it's disconnection? We don't. Most, I guess. How many people even live near? Even if you do live near a river, you very rarely will see the consequences of what we're describing because it's so quickly flushed out to sea, which is the sort of point of location of the storm pipes and the whole system. But you read a story about the boat race and you think, well, I'm not a cox in a boat race. Do you think that? Why do you care? What is it in your life that has brought you closer to the story?
Well, I think there's a couple of reasons. I think 2020 was an important year. So many people were out on the waterways and kayaks through lockdown, and that was a realisation of, oh, yeah, look, there's all this available. Let's go swimming. Let's do this. And I was blissfully unaware of the state of affairs. I'm nearly 40, and my perception has been that the water was cleaner than ever.
Yeah.
Things were improving. The environment's in a better place in this country. And then the reality is that's not the case. I've got friends that live on the coast who are constantly having to check various apps to see whether they can go swimming in the sea. And most of the time they shouldn't, but sometimes they do. I did a kayaking trip last year. We did the length of the Wye, which is on the England-Wales border.
Oh, yeah, I know the Wye. Beautiful.
Beautiful spot. And we did that over a few days. And for large stretches of it, there is signs saying, do not swim. Although that's got a slightly different cause. That's because the farmers flushing out a lot of their chemicals
as well.
The river. But either way, it's so sad that you're in what seems to be paradise. And it's like, nope.
You can't get in the water. And I mean, people are free to speculate on what the political reasons may be. Things have got measurably worse since Brexit or since 2016, but I don't know whether that is because of a relaxation of regulation or a less robust imposition of scrutiny and service. When you do that, briefly, Chris, is it organised? Does somebody else arrange where you sleep and stop along the way and stuff like that, or do you do it all yourself?
Yeah, that was really just a bit of planning between me and a couple of friends. So, yeah, really...
So you pull the kayak out of the water and then you've arranged where you're going to stay that night?
Either that or completely legally wild camp.
Oh, wow, well, lovely. That'd be nice as well. I love that part of the world. It's one of my favourite parts of the world. Ross-on-Wye, Hay-on-Wye. The bookshops in Hay-on-Wye remain one of my kind of all-time favourite destinations. Thank you, mate. Ben's in Exeter. Ben, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Yeah, so I've recently moved down to Exeter from Bradford in West Yorkshire.
Oh, yeah, why is that?
And have you been to Bradford? No, to be fair, Bradford's a great city, but I had opportunity to move down here, and we really like it down here, holidayed down here and what have you, and got the opportunity, so me and my wife moved down. Now, when I was up in West Yorkshire, the sewage, I was aware of it, but you don't think much of it because you're landlocked. You've not got a coast for miles.
Is that right?
And I think that a lot of the population, it's not an everyday thing you think about, because unless you're going to throw yourself in the canal, you don't worry about the water quality. Whereas moving down here, all of a sudden we see basically how they've devastated the coastline, and it's South West Water doing it down here. You know, Thames Water.
What do you mean when you say devastated the coastline? What do you mean?
Pumped it full of waste.
But what can you see? How does that? How, I mean, is it just signs up saying don't go in, or I mean, is it grimmer than that even?
Well, a couple of weeks ago in Exmouth, the only time that South West Water had stopped polluting the sea was when they stopped pumping effluent into the sea and they pumped it into the town centre. One of the local parks, so it is visible often.
And so around where you are, and a mate of mine's just moved to Exeter actually as well. Is it a high level of interest? Is it a big topic of conversation? Is it something? So we've got a kind of postcode, not lottery, but a postcode factor kicking in, whereas if you live near the sea, if you live on a river, if you live near the discharge, it's going to be one of the biggest issues in your life, but if you don't, it simply isn't.
Exactly, yeah, and I don't think, and you know, people have enough to focus on that. If you're living in Bradford, you know, Manchester, it's not top of your list. But I think that you made your second point about, you know, is it political and why does it not get the recognition? So I think aside from people not seeing it, when you look at the politics, the Tories are not going to be interested in highlighting more of their own corruption or telling
potential donors to wind their neck in.
Yeah, because we've just funded South West Water's profits. They've been paid money to fix the sewage system over decades. They've not done it.
This isn't unique by any means. I know you know this. It's not unique to South West Water. The figures, we revisit the figures every time we talk about this issue, that the amount of money taken out of the water companies over the last few years is absolutely extraordinary. And South West is your speciality. Thames is in the news at the moment because they've run out of money, and shareholders who've taken millions and millions out are struggling, or rather refusing to give them more money unless the bills are put up. So the customers are going to be hit over the head with that. I don't know though. I mean, you're obviously right, but people who live in all the places you've just listed aren't likely to be affected by a trigger warning on a Shakespeare production in a small theatre in South London. But there are elements of the media that will be chasing down stories like that on an almost daily basis. So how can the introduction of poo to our waterways be less exciting to elements of our media than a trigger warning on a production of Macbeth in Stoke Newington or whatever this week's Woke Watch should be focusing on. I don't quite get that. Is that psychology rather than geography?
Yeah, because if you were getting annoyed that Easter eggs don't say Easter on them, that a made-up story like that, there's a reason why you're getting annoyed about things like that, because you're embarrassed about the state of the, you've had every vote go your way for the last 15 years.
And there you are.
And so why would I get bothered about
don't blame me. Look for things that I can't be blamed on all the people I voted for, all the things that I've helped facilitate. So I'm going to get angry with things I haven't facilitated at all, except small boats, of course, which is a direct consequence of Tory policy and 14 years of Tory rule, but which the Tory party is banking on voters being so cross about that they'll vote for the Tory party again. It's a funny old world. 10:32 is the time. My mate Luke, by the way, is doing Krav Maga lesson. How are you? Are you fit, Ben? Are you in a fit state and all that?
If you ask my wife, I'm not as fit as I used to be. But trying to get
self-defense. You any good at self-defense? Can you look after yourself if you got into a bit of bother on a dark night in an alleyway?
I saw your tweet the other day.
Check it out.
I will look him up.
So seriously, it's in your neck of the woods. I don't know if there's any discount for being a JOB, 10% JOB discount, but he's a good lad and he's really, really good. He loves his Krav Maga.
James O'Brien on LBC. Listen on your smart speaker. Just say, play LBC.
10:37 is the time. It's Thursday, isn't it? So Miss Jarrett 12. And I've got 3 stories. So Henry Riley will join us at 11:45 to cover at least one of them. There are 2 stories of almost unbelievable political incompetence that I am keen to share with you today. Shall we do one now? I think we should do one now, and then we'll get back to the waterways. Do you know who has been made? 30p Lee left the Tory party. Let me just check with the producer. What party is he in this week? Do we know? Are we? No? Okay. Anyway, he's not in the Tory party anymore, 30p Lee. He was in the Labour Party at the last 2015 election, the Tory party in the 2019 election. He resigned as deputy chairman of the Tory party so that he could vote against the Rwanda bill, but then he went into the lobby to vote against the Rwanda bill and people started sniggling, so he didn't vote against the Rwanda bill. I think he abstained instead, and then he got fired for being, I think it was Islamophobic comments about Sadiq Khan. So you get fired as deputy chairman, but if you're a 15 million quid donor, that's all fine. And they had to replace him, so they found a new deputy chairman of the Tory party. Now, if you were to set aside all sympathy for satirists and answer this question honestly, if you were trying to undo some of the damage caused by making Lee Anderson deputy chairman of the Conservative Party, who is the very last person you would replace him with? I'm going to say that again because the words are important. If you were trying to undo some of the damage, because it was, an absolute humiliation for Sunak in so many ways to see someone that he had personally promoted not only resign from the position he was promoted to, but then leave the party altogether for reasons that are still not entirely clear. If you were trying to undo some of the damage done by promoting a dunderhead like 30p Lee Anderson, who is the last person on earth that you would replace him with as deputy chairman of the Conservative Party? All together now? Yeah. Here's Jonathan Gullis on Sky News with Sophie Ridge the other night.
Those pesky peers in the House of Lords, predominantly Labour, and Labour MPs and Sir Keir Starmer in the House of Commons are continuing to block any attempts that we make in order to get this Rwanda policy off the ground, because one, it will act as an effective deterrent, but you need it, as with all the other measures, to make sure that we have that effective plans.
You abstained in the Rwanda vote, didn't you?
Well, actually, I voted in favour of the Nationality and Borders Act and voted for the Illegal Migration Act. And with the Rwanda bill, what I made very clear was that I wanted to see the bill pass. So I didn't block or deter it at any point.
But you suggested some
amendments. Well, I suggested amendments, Sophie, and obviously that's a matter of public record. Did you
abstain or not on the Rwanda bill?
Sophie, that's a matter of public record. I did choose to abstain on that particular bill.
But you're one of the pesky. You can't blame the pesky Labour peers. You didn't vote for it either.
Sophie, I can actually, Sophie, because at the end of the day, I haven't voted like Labour have over 90 times to block the Rwanda scheme from being able to take place.
You abstained on it. You didn't vote for it. You can't think it was that great. You didn't vote for it.
Sophie, there's a very clear difference here between saying that you want something to work, you believe in Rwanda, as I do, and I want Rwanda to work, as I do.
Why didn't you vote for it?
The Prime Minister does. But obviously I had, with that particular bill, a couple of amendments that I wanted to see be adopted.
And that, of course, it is on the issue of amendments that Labour peers continue to send the bill back to the House of Commons. Amendments including, let's not deport people who worked with the British Army. Let's not deport people who helped our troops in Afghanistan. Let's not deport people who are proven victims of modern slavery. Those kind of little details that Jonathan Gullis is in favour of, but some of the peers, including, of course, some very eminent Tory peers who must be, I don't know quite what the phrase would be, but in freefall at what their party has become in subsequent years. Do you know, nobody got that wrong. That's actually extraordinary. As I see so many texts and WhatsApps coming into the studio now, we need to sort of, I don't know, slow it down somehow, as I can't keep up. But nobody got that wrong. I don't think the word Gullis has been typed so many times, probably in human history, or at least since he was a teacher. Do you know this story? He was a teacher and some of the kids put together, they put his head on a picture of a seagull, and he absolutely lost his lunch. Reportedly. I mean, it may not be true either way, but I kind of find it, sadly, far too easy to believe. In fact, I would go so far as to say that the very thought of it makes me sniggle. It's 10:41. Back to the waterways. Alex is in Leicester. Alex, what do you think? What's going on?
Hi, James.
Hello.
What I was going to say to you, I think there's a massive disconnect between the public and actually where their water comes from.
Yes,
Most people seem to think that they just turn the tap on and it appears and it comes from a reservoir. But also, I mean, you go shopping at the weekend, the amount of people buying bottled water as well.
Yes.
It just doesn't click. I mean, I think if it came out the tap and it was a horrible muddy brown water colour, I think people would be more sort of like concerned about it.
Yes.
But the whole thing you were saying.
Well, they are when it is, of course. It does occasionally happen, doesn't it?
Every so often it does happen. But because we have such stringent things with regards to our water in this country, it very rarely happens. And I think people just don't make that connection as such. I know you referred to sort of like emergency discharges earlier in the show. I mean, this has been going on for absolute donkey's years. About 7 years ago, I was working as an environmental advisor along the Solent, and Southern Water were up to their old tricks then. And what they would call it would be storm discharges, but it wouldn't be during a storm. So every time it rained, pretty much they would just let go this untreated sewage straight into the Solent. So that would probably account for a lot of the hours that you've got.
Yes, of course. I mean, I think they are technically all called storm discharges, but 3.6 million hours of storm discharges, people are going to be wondering when all these storms happened.
Exactly. And they just use that every time it rains as a convenient excuse just to let go of it.
What's changed then? You're a bit closer to the action than I am. I mean, is it as simple as saying that if you give all the money to the shareholders and spend none of it on infrastructure and improvement, then eventually everything's going to get measurably worse? And in the context of a water company, measurably worse means sewage in the water.
Yeah, I think also the fact that we aren't held to account by what was the Water Framework Directive originally, which of course was a part of EU legislation. We voted to get rid of that. So now that we're not held to account by that either.
Do you think that's a big part of it? That's because I mean,
think that's an extremely big part of it.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't surprise me. What do you think Britain's privatised water and sewage companies paid in dividends in 2022? Go on, have a guess.
I have absolutely no idea, but I would imagine it being billions.
Well, it is indeed in billions, £1.4 billion in dividends to shareholders. And at Thames Water in particular, those self-same shareholders are now refusing to give more money to the water giant to fix the problems we're describing and telling them instead to put up bills.
Absolutely believe it. And also the fact that a lot of the shareholders aren't based in this country. I mean, for example, things like South East Water, they have Australian shareholders. They're predominantly
this is a fine Tory tradition. Because sometimes it'll be foreign governments even that own some of our institutions and utilities. I think the China Investment Corporation owns a fat slice of Thames Water. So the Tories are great enthusiasts for the state ownership of public utilities, but only when it's foreign states. When it's our own state that wants to own the railways or own the water companies or own energy companies, they are passionately opposed to it. But when it's France or China or Australia, they're all for it.
Yeah, because then they can just kick it overseas. It doesn't concern them. But as long as they're getting that money rolling in, they're absolutely
I wonder how many shareholders are donors. Alex, thank you. I mean, this is one of those stories where there's no push back. You know, even if you spend your life desperately trying to persuade yourself that you haven't been sold pup after pup after pup since 2010, and that your votes for Cameron and Theresa May and Boris Johnson and Brexit, and it was all definitely the right thing to do, and Labour would have been much worse, and it's all Remainers' fault that everything has gone badly. Even if you listen to this programme as a form of penance, as a form of masochism, because you are part of the problems that we describe every day, this is a story that you can't even begin to push back on. You can't say, no, this has got nothing to do with the kind of people that donate money to the Tory party, absolutely rinsing our national infrastructure for personal profit while leaving everybody else to swim in shocking amounts of sewage. There's literally no pushback. Oh, stop being so naive, or stop being such a lefty. There's nowhere you can go with this, which is possibly, conversely, counterintuitively, that might be an answer to the question about why it doesn't resonate more, because everybody knows it would. So that's why it's only on the front page of The Guardian today, because most of the other newspapers have been a huge part of putting us in the position that we're in, whether you're talking about water companies or trade, or whether you're talking about the economy or the cost of living or whatever it may be, or indeed the absolute flotsam and jetsam that now populates the upper echelons of our government. If you as a member of the media were part of that, it would be hard to go deep on the water story, if you pardon the pun, because, well, like almost everything else that's gone wrong in this country since 2010, but especially 2016, you are complicit in the problem.
James O'Brien on LBC.
10:51, some breaking-ish news for you. The official figures that look at the state of the British economy have been released. These are the revisions of the ones that were found last month to have delivered recession, to have put the UK into recession. But sometimes, as you know, the revised figures, when slightly more detailed evidence becomes available, the figures and therefore the depictions, the definitions can be revised. That so-called double dip recession, for example, in 2011, when George Osborne was Chancellor, was eventually found not to have actually happened. The numbers weren't quite there for the definition of recession. But the Office of National Statistics has now double-checked its sums and concluded that the UK economy did indeed go into recession at the end of last year, with the latest estimate finding it contracted in the last 2 quarters of 2023. Listen, I am no fan of this government, as you know, so you can probably trust me more than anyone else when I say I don't think it will last. I do think that the oil tanker has probably already turned around, but for a man whose entire premiership is supposed to be built on fiscal genius, or at least fiscal responsibility, and of course at the beginning of last year was promising that this sort of thing was going to be dealt with very, very swiftly, it's an epic humiliation for Rishi Sunak, and one that no doubt he'll seek to blame on the boogie. It's 10:52. Back to the waterways. I've got 2 more stories for you of, frankly, epic. I can't believe they've all come along at once. Honestly, you wait days for examples of politicians behaving like complete prunes, and then 3, although one of them is not a proper politician, and then 3 come along at once and vie for the title of biggest muppet of the week. So we had Jonathan Gullis complaining about Labour peers not voting for the Rwanda bill in the House of Lords, and being reminded by the inimitable Sophie Ridge of Sky News that he didn't vote for that bill either when he had the opportunity in the House of Commons. I said it before and I'll say it again. It's the satirists I feel sorry for. In the next hour, we'll come across 2 more, one of which Henry Riley will tell us about, but only as an adjunct to a story that you may have heard about without fully understanding. It's the Veterans Minister, Johnny Mercer, who faces a very real possibility of going to jail if he refuses to reveal the sources who have told him about British troops committing war crimes in Afghanistan between 2001 and 2021. It's probably quite a complicated story, both evidentially and morally, and that may be why I haven't managed to get my head fully around it. And whenever I find myself not having got my head fully around an interesting story, I like to dispatch young Henry to get to the bottom of things. So he'll be joining us in just under an hour. Before that, back into the water. Eamon is in Woodbridge in Suffolk, a lovely part of the world. Eamon, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. How are you?
Very well. What's on your mind?
James, it's water is on my mind almost constantly.
Really?
I'm the chair. Yeah, funnily enough. I'm the chair of a small outfit called the Deep Climate Centre.
We're going to have to try and sort your phone light out, Eamon. Phone line even. I do apologise. Jennifer is in Dorset. Jennifer, what made you pick up the phone?
Well, everyone's going on about the effluent going into the water streams. We've actually got it going down our street. Every few weeks we get a little email coming round saying you can't go down this particular area because I won't give a name, they probably know Wessex Water, is digging up the street because they burst. They're so old, you see.
If you go down to the street today, you're in for a big surprise.
Exactly. The water, we're on chalk stream as well, so the water doesn't flow down, does it, into the down through the grass and the land. So the water, like today, I mean, it's going to be, we're waiting for a note from them, an email from them. It comes down into the river, down the stream, down the bottom. It puts pressure on the pipes, and they're old pipes. I must say that it gives the impression that they're doing, the Water Board, Wessex Water, are doing it on purpose. But it is the fact they haven't got any money to dig the whole lot up.
I'm not surprised they're giving billions of pounds to shareholders every year. There's not going to be any money left over for replacing pipes. Don't be so ridiculous. What are you, a communist?
That's the fault, obviously, of the ages ago when they went into a limited company. They do come whenever, and also I must say that sometimes building new properties, that puts a pressure on.
And developers aren't always required to ensure that they're putting in the infrastructure that's needed to lessen the blow to what's already in place.
That's right, but here in Dorset they're a bit more responsible, I must say, because we've had a couple of developments going on in our area, and they do insist on the planning to have a report to say whether it's going to put too much pressure. And in fact, they've done that now.
Well, this is all that regulation and red tape that Jacob Rees-Mogg keeps telling us that we want less of. Briefly, Jennifer, I mean, how unpleasant is the fluid that makes its way down your street?
Well, you don't see lumps, put it that way.
You're a poet. You're a poet, Jennifer, and you don't know it.
By the time it gets through, obviously it's.
But there's little doubt about what was once a lump.
Oh yeah, but it'll be reduced down, won't it? It'll be as if it's in the water. It'll be now. It'll be dirty rain, and it does smell, and it's not healthy.
Oh,
and we're surrounded by farms, obviously.
So you've got the added problem of runoff and some of the pesticides and well, it's again. I hate to labour this point, but someone has to. These are the regulations and the red tape that everyone voted to get rid of in 2016. You literally wanted more shocking amounts of sewage making their way down your street. Martin's texted to ask, James, why do you keep extending the shush sound when you say shocking amounts of sewage? If you can't work that out, I can't help you, all right? It's to give Keith a heart attack because he thinks I'm going to say a Rudy. I'm cracking on, Jennifer, only because I sensed that Eamon had some equally interesting contributions to make, and I'm very short of time. Eamon, back to you.
Hi, James. Sorry about the line.
It's not your fault.
Yeah, I run an outfit called the Deben Climate Centre with quite a few other people. And we've been testing water on the River Deben in Suffolk for 2 years, testing for E. coli and phosphate. And we regularly find all the way up the river, it's got an estuary, but it's also got a non-tidal part. Right. And all the way from the mouth down to the sea at Felixstowe, we find huge levels of E. coli and of phosphate.
Are you surprised by the lack of... I mean, I know it does get reported, and I know that Fergal Sharkey is doing extraordinary work in this field, and I know that we turn our attention to it, and some of my colleagues do as well, more often than we ever have done before. But being so close to the action, so to speak, does it surprise you that it's not a bigger issue, a bigger story?
Well, it's a big issue around here, very locally. Yeah. But and everybody is aware now. Nobody was aware 2 years ago before we managed to get Anglian Water to agree to put a sanitisation plant into a wonderful place called Martlesham Creek, which was renamed Creek.
Thank you.
Locally.
Yes.
And
have you ever been there without a paddle, Eamon?
I've never been in the water in that creek.
Good God, I should hope not. So, I mean, that's the only thing that's ever going to improve things, when these companies start spending money on infrastructure and improvement.
Well, it is, but the tail end of this story is that 9 months ago, designated bathing water status was granted to a small village called Waldringfield, which is just downstream from from Barbican. However, the sanitisation plant, which was promised by Anglian Water and so on, and agreed by DEFRA, basically has not arrived. So the first summer's assessment of the bathing water status, of course, is poor. So it's failed.
Well, colour me shocked. You'll appreciate this. It's not the company you refer to, but it's the owners of Thames Water. I shall run through them in no particular... Well, actually, in descending order of stake, how big a stake there are. Here it goes. These are the external shareholders of Thames Water. Ontario Municipal Employees Retirement System. The University Superannuation Scheme, so that is a UK pension scheme. Then you've got a subsidiary of the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority. Then you've got the British Columbia Investment Management Corporation. Then you've got Hermes, independent specialists in global private markets. And then you've got the China Investment Corporation, the Queensland Investment Corporation, Aquila GP, which I don't think is British, but I could be wrong, and I'm pretty sure this one isn't. Then you've got Stichting Pensioenfonds Zorg en Welzijn, which I don't think is English.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with James O'Brien.
4 minutes after 11 is the time. It feels... people forget when people wish you a happy Easter. It doesn't really become happy until Sunday, which is, of course, Easter Day. Tomorrow is Good Friday, which obviously commemorates the crucifixion of Christ. I don't know why, but the story coming from the United Nations at the moment about starvation being used as a weapon in Gaza just sort of made Easter this year feel a little bit more poignant for me, because the sense of suffering, not just there but elsewhere in the world as well, seems a little bit more acute at the moment. Ukraine, I read a very depressing piece in the Times today about the possible fall of Kyiv if the West doesn't get its act together shortly and start providing them with more weapons. But I'm going to talk about religion until 11:45. Now, I wonder how many people just went, oh, never mind, I'll turn it off, I'll put on some music. I hope you didn't. I hope I've just grabbed you in the nick of time. Because you hear an awful lot about the negatives of religion, even on this programme, about fundamentalism, about extremism, about hypocrisy. And we also hear a lot more about religions other than Christianity than we used to do, largely, sadly, for negative reasons. Any British Muslim will tell you that since the September the 11th terror attacks, their life has changed irrevocably. Their life has changed extraordinarily. The last person to tell me that in an interview context was the former chairman of the Conservative Party, Baroness Saeeda Varsi. And, there's always been abuse, there's always been racism, there's always been prejudice. But what was once quite generic for anyone with brown skin has become, since the rise of Islamist terrorism, has become much more religion-specific. So the P word going into a form of retreat and being attacked simply for the religion that you subscribe to, becoming grounds for all sorts of abuses, and from all corners of society, not just from the sort of National Front end of the picture, but right up to and including people that write for Andrew Neil's Spectator magazine, for example. Islamophobia or the hatred of Muslims, or the insistence that all Muslims should somehow be punished or held accountable for the actions of terrorists has become commonplace in upper echelons of the Tory party as well. So we don't talk about Christianity much anymore, which also has plenty of negatives in its history. You don't have to go for the greatest hits like the Spanish Inquisition or something like that. You could look at the history of Christianity in England, the history of Christianity in Britain, and have a look at the astonishing yo-yoing of murderous, supposedly religious persecution between just three monarchs, Henry VIII followed by his two daughters. But so I mention all of that just to remind you that the negatives are constantly discussed, and Christianity is almost only ever used, I think, very cynically and very inauthentically by people who never seem to live by Christian values. I appeared in a country's top 50 Catholics not long ago, or top 100, I can't remember. But some of the people that were also on that list, I think most obviously Jacob Rees-Mogg and Ian Duncan Smith, seem to me to be subscribers to and promoters of policies that couldn't be further removed from the stuff that I studied when I was at a monastic boarding school, and the stuff that I hear from the pulpit and sometimes have the pleasure of sharing myself from the lectern when I am in church. Now, I'll get the personal stuff out of the way early. I oscillate. I'm in a down period at the moment. Faith for me is a very impermanent thing. Sometimes I'm acutely conscious of the absurdity of the whole shebang. I spent most of my 20s thinking it was ridiculous, pushing back furiously against what had been inflicted upon me by various nuns and monks and priests pretty much from the cradle. My late father, however, was very devout, so when he died, much to my own surprise, I had a bit of a reverse. Before he died, actually, but we had a bit of a reverse. I found myself going to church very, very regularly again for the opportunity both of therapy and of talking to him. Actually, I used to catch myself talking to Dad. I talk to Dad in two places more than any other. One is in church, and one is watching Kidderminster Harriers play football, because it was one of the last things we did together before he died. And I mean, to be fair, the Catholic tradition of penance and self-punishment fits pretty neatly into both categories, whether you're watching Kiddie or whether you're in church reflecting upon the sacrifices made by the Christ. You're moving into similarly sacrificial territory. But this week, something weird happened to me, and I'd like to talk to you about it very briefly before we spend a moment to mark Easter by looking at the benefits, the positives of religious faith. Because you can send me all the messages you want telling me that it's all a load of nonsense and I don't believe in any sky fairies, and most of the time, nor do I these days, but I think I probably will again. But you can't argue with the statistics, which are just weird. And people who have religious faith are generally happier and better adjusted than people who don't. I mean, if you wanted to be cynical, you could say there's a reason why we invented God. We invented God because it helps. We have a very strange relationship with death in this country, but if you think that your loved ones are in paradise, it's a hell of a lot easier to cope with death than it is if you think that they're worm food, isn't it? Maybe not for you, but generally speaking, faith delivers all sorts of positives that often get glossed over. But the weird thing, I'm going to play quite a long clip now, and then we'll get stuck right into it. Actually, no, I'll play wait and see. I was with the Archbishop of Canterbury late last week, and I don't think, and remember I spent almost all of my formative years with monks in particular, and when I was very young with nuns. I don't think I've ever heard anybody speak in quite the way he does about Jesus. Now, even as I say the word Jesus there's a little bit of me that's laughing, right, or sniggering, or becoming self-conscious. And that's what I found unique about Justin Welby, is that when we moved into this territory, and he is my guest on Full Disclosure this week, and it covers an awful lot of ground. We touch upon Rwanda, we touch upon politics, the role of the House of Lords. I think Jonathan Gullis makes an appearance, believe it or not, because he said that priests are spending too much time in the pulpit, preaching from the pulpit, which means he doesn't really understand what a priest is or a pulpit. But it's Jonathan Gullis, so no major surprises there. I can't remember someone speaking about Jesus in such an authentic fashion, without any apparent need to qualify it or to self-center. I can't do it. I just told you then. I say the word Jesus, and automatically in my head I'm thinking, what can I say to insulate myself from the fact that you think I'm silly? There's something really extraordinary, which is the word I'm using far too much at the moment. A couple of you have noticed. I'll find a new one for next week. There's something truly remarkable about pure faith. I don't think we see it very often. Quite often when people insist that they're Catholics or Christians or tweet hallelujah every Easter, they are what I guess you'd have to call virtue signalling. Quite often they're making excuses for their lives and their politics by saying, no, I'm a Christian. You saw a lot of this in the 19th century. You know, you might own a mill where children are having their backs broken, making you richer, but you go to church every Sunday and have your own pew up the front with a little plaque on it, so you must be going straight to heaven. Catholics used to have indulgences where you could literally buy or give money to buy a bit of the cross, which was very unlikely to be a bit of the actual cross. And you'd buy an indulgence and it would sort of get you, it would cancel out some of your sins. confession in the Catholic Church is not the same because it doesn't involve privilege, but it does involve the notion of a scales and balances that you can fix. So you very rarely encounter somebody who is not talking about Christianity because they're trying to convince you that they're a good person, brackets, when they're probably not, close brackets. You put me in that category if you want. I don't think it's fair, but I can live with it. I listen to politicians talking about being Christians or being Catholics, and usually it seems to me that they're saying, no. The things I actually do and vote for might be disgusting and cruel and callous and mean, but I go to church every Sunday, so I can't possibly be a disgusting and callous and cruel and mean person. So often, when people are telling you about their faith or their religion, they're not really doing it in an authentic fashion. They're doing it in quite a self-interested and fraudulent fashion. And then I sat down with the Archbishop of Canterbury last week. It's quite a long clip, but I really want you to listen to it. It is Easter, after all, and it is a conversation that we don't have very often and won't have very often, but must and should have every now and then.
I met someone called Simon Barrington Ward at a party. He was a friend of the people who were having the party, and he invited me to go, and they had a program, 7-month, 8-month teaching in Kenya, right out in the middle of nowhere. And I did that. And I found myself this was 1974, it was only 10 years after independence for Kenya. And I was in a school that was built on the site of a former internment camp during the Mau Mau uprising of the 1950s, what they called the emergency. And the head teacher there was remarkable because he'd been interned by the Brits. And there was no resentment, and he was a Christian. And for the first time, I met people for whom God wasn't a concept or an idea, but someone they knew. And that completely blew my mind and blew open the resistance, the complacent and arrogant ignorance with which I'd been living at school, that this was just tomfoolery, because this was so genuine. And that really opened the way to me at the beginning of my second year at university, stopping running away from the God I realized existed and being willing to turn round and open up my life to Jesus Christ with a complete lack of, a half lack of faith. So a prayer which said, God, I don't know if you exist, but if you do, I'd like you to be in charge of my life. And just finding then something, a presence, a reality in life that changed the whole way the world looked.
What was it then about the head teacher? Was it that he felt God had guided him through what could have been an unbearable experience?
No, he didn't hate. He wasn't bitter. He was patient. He was paid 3/5 of nothing at all.
Yes.
And he loved the kids. And some of them quite difficult. And he just had a deep set, gentle and gracious humanity about the way he behaved.
And you felt that he was deriving that in part through faith?
I felt that it came from his faith.
Yes.
Yeah. And we'd sit and talk. He was very realistic about the problems of Kenya at the time. But when I said to him on one occasion, well, you keep talking about corruption, and you keep talking about this, and you keep talking about that. And I said, well, you said it was better under the British. And he said, yes, it was, in some ways. But you need to remember, it's never better to be ruled by a foreign power. It's never good to be a colony. We'd have to take responsibility for our own future. But he didn't do it bitterly at all. And the other thing, I shared a very small house, indeed, with an English bloke, and he prayed every morning, and I sort of thought, and he, that was the essential bit of his day.
There's a perception, this might be more Catholic than C of E, but a perception that religion involves sacrifice and giving things up, but you're describing it as something enriching and something that you almost envied when you saw the effect that it had had upon these two people in particular. Or desired, if not envied.
Yeah, it wasn't envied. It was, I saw a richness there, yes, of a totally different kind. Of course, it does involve giving some things up. It involves sacrifice to some degree. But the presence of God, the knowledge of God, knowledge that you're loved by God through Jesus is infinitely more powerful and richer than anything one has to forego.
And I'd never heard it put like that before, which is extraordinary when you consider the sort of schooling that I've had and the life that I'd led. But I guess that's why he's ended up Archbishop of Canterbury, isn't it? It's not by accident. It's like becoming manager of the England football team. You're probably going to be quite good at what you do. So, listen, we've only got about half an hour on this, so don't hold back. Get your call in early. Very simple question. How has it improved your life? In like ways that other people would understand, sort of in ways that you reflected upon then when you heard the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, just simply describing that sense of love, that sense of being loved. How has that helped you? How has that worked for you? 0345 6060 973. And don't forget, it's Mystery Hour at 12, so we will go from the divine to the ridiculous.
Leading Britain's conversation. LBC with James O'Brien.
It is 22 minutes after 11. Dave, I'm not. Listen, I'm not here to sort of administer to your spiritual needs or anything like that. But I completely get where you're coming from when you write, if God loves us so much, He gives our kids cancer. It's all absolute rollicks. You can have 6 billion believers, but it doesn't make it real, just as billions of kids believe in stuff that isn't real either. I'm surprised a man as smart as you believes this codswallop. I don't, Dave. Most days, I don't believe it. Most years, I don't believe it. But I do believe that when I'm in church or when I'm praying or when I'm talking to someone like Justin Welby, it's doing me good. And we talk, if you need any encouragement, or I sense you it may already be a lost cause, but if we talk a lot about how you can carry on believing in God after terrible things happen. And you mentioned kids getting cancer. Justin Welby and his wife lost a baby girl in a car crash. And we touch on that as well. He also, during that period of time that he spent in Kenya, he and I might need a slight trigger warning here, but one of the students he was teaching took their own life, and it fell to the Archbishop to cut him down from a tree. So he when he talks about Jesus and God, he's not forgetting, Dave, that terrible things happen. In fact, he would argue that his faith helps him make sense of them in a way that you and I perhaps can't. 23 minutes after 11. So just a quick chat about the good stuff, because we spend so much time, and will continue to, talking about the bad stuff. James, what would you like to say? James in Glasgow, what's on your mind?
Hi, good morning, James. Lovely to speak to you again, pal.
Likewise.
I'm a practicing Catholic, James. I'm at Mass kind of constantly as much as I can, and just when you were speaking earlier on about guys like Jacob Rees-Mogg, who absolutely sicken me.
Well, that's not very Christian of either of us, is it? We should really be.
Agree.
Go on.
People who claim to be Christian do not carry out any of the values. Absolutely, to use a Glasgow word, scunner me. I'm a man of faith. My family goes to Mass. I love faith, all faith. I mean, I was telling your researcher.
It's not a great phone line, James. So just if I let me nudge you towards how would your life be different without it?
It's all I've got to kind of hold on to, James.
Gosh.
I mean, I've had bad grief in the family just a year and a half ago. My wife's younger sister died of sepsis, and she died in my arms. So my wife's went the opposite way. She's went away from the church.
Oh, how interesting.
Whereas it's all I've got to hold on to, if that makes sense.
Of course it does.
I'm a postman, James, so I listen to you do my delivery every day. So that's my way. Sorry how the line's bad. So I've come into my van. I listen to you every day. Religiously, basically, I listen to you
while you're delivering the good news.
I do. Well, it gets me through my day
and the bad news,
and it lets me. Times I'm not listening to you, I genuinely say Hail Marys to myself. It's what gets me through, and I understand people hate faith because.
They see all the very very bad things that have been done in the name of faith. I've got to crack on, James, only because of the phone line. I'm grateful to you for getting into your van, but it's still suboptimal. But I like that. And I mean, one thing that always intrigues me is the sense of embarrassment. And I've gone through phases in my life when I've really needed it. I've been a little bit embarrassed about it, or maybe quite a lot embarrassed about it. I mean, the church guy doing the readings in church, that kind of thing. Normally, I'd boast about that. I boast about everything. You know me. No, I wouldn't. I kind of keep that one on the down low, and I'm not in that zone at the moment, so I can tell you about it without feeling a bit potentially silly. Angela is in Bexley. Angela, what would you like to say?
Oh, hello there. Yeah,
Hello.
I'd just like to say that first up, I admit I'm a cradle Catholic.
Yes.
So, but I think for me, it's really been like I went to this Catholic school in London, and we had one word under our badge. It was serviam.
Yes.
It just meant service. And the badge was a constellation. It was a little bear. So wherever I am, I'm outside in the garden. I'm looking up, and I see the little bear, and I think, come on, Lord, you got to serve. And many, many, many decisions have I made based on that one word, and the joy and the people and the connections even that come into your life is phenomenal. Really, I mean, I just had I am a teacher.
Okay.
I had a young girl of mine who I taught years ago, and she messaged me this week on Facebook to say, here's my certificate. She'd joined the police, and she'd had a certificate for saving a man's life.
Gosh.
These young... I used to work in a Catholic school, and so... Gosh, service,
yeah. And the thing is, I'll get a couple of texts now, and well, I do lots of service, and I do lots of things and I'm not religious, and no one's saying that there is a call, that you can't have one without the other. Lots of wonderful, kind, charitable, brilliant people don't have any religion in their life at all, but you're just describing someone who thinks that their relationship with service has been in part informed by their religious instruction, by their religious education.
Yes. What I would say to that, though, is that we're human beings, not human doings. So part of my life is not just service. There is a prayer life. There is silence.
Yes.
There is that time. And that actually really is where the gold comes, the inspiration comes. Those moments where you are standing in your garden and looking at the sky, having a sense of wonder, and you're looking at the little bear and you're thinking, come on now, you've got to serve. So I think they're joint, they're connected. There's a big connection for me, at least.
I love that. And again, it doesn't necessarily demand religion, but for you, that's where that feeling comes from, and you recognise the value and the importance of that feeling. Do you want the good news? Not literally, that's in the Gospels, but do you want some good news, Angela?
Go for it.
It's just been announced, I think, in the last 24 hours, that you can now buy a Donald Trump branded Bible.
You have to laugh, don't you?
I think you probably do. You think I'm joking, but it's have a guess how much it is. A Donald Trump.
$20.
No, higher.
Oh God, 50.
Nearly, bit higher.
60.
Yay! We got a winner. $60 for a God Bless the USA Bible, endorsed by Donald Trump. Crikey. The French don't get everything right, but separating church and state was probably a step in the right direction. Unami is in... I'll come to you first after the news because it's 11:30. Also, I must quickly tell you at the very beginning of the next section, either before or after we speak to Unami, about our second contender for the political catastrophe of the week. And it's an absolute doozy. If I tell you that it involves a member of Parliament, a fish and chip shop, and Lee Anderson levels of ignorance of your own past, then you may, if you spend too much time on Twitter, as I do, you may be able to put the pieces of the jigsaw together to come up with the picture before I have actually described it to you. But then, with Henry Riley, after he brings us up to date on this fascinating Johnny Mercer story, we have a tale of, I think, the funniest thing that I can remember happening in politics in a very long time, and that includes Lee Anderson.
This is LBC. Message James O'Brien on WhatsApp now on 0345 60 60 973.
It is 26 minutes to 12. I will talk to Unami, and then I will give you the second contender for this week's extraordinary competition to be the daftest politician in town. The daftest politician in town was the smartest giant in town, Julia Donaldson. It wasn't, was it? But did you know? Guess how old the Gruffalo is this year? You familiar with the Gruffalo? Axel Scheffler's illustrations, Julia Donaldson's text, possibly the finest rhyming Well, no, let's not have an argument about it, but a truly beautiful children's book. And I couldn't believe how old it was this year. I'll tell you shortly. Unami is in Luton. Unami, back to religion. What made you pick up the phone?
Good morning, James. How are you?
Very well indeed. What's on your mind?
Good. I'm a first-time caller. I was just calling to speak about the practical elements of being a believer.
Yes.
You get, number one, that springs to my mind, is community. So I've
That's
benefited from many bottles of drink and, food items being handed to me by a elderly member of the church, seeing me as a younger person who could be their grandson, for example, and they're furnishing me with food and drink, and I go home with that. So even if I haven't paid attention to the sermon, I've benefited.
What sort of church is this where you get given free food just for turning up?
Oh, James, you're in the wrong churches, I assume.
You're missing out.
Because
this is outrageous. We just
in
get
my
a bit.
church-
Obviously, we get the body and blood of Christ in a Catholic church, but I mean, it's nourishing in spiritual ways, Unami. But it doesn't really fill the hole.
I know, but we're blessed to have a lot of Caribbean cooks, so we benefit many times from some dinner after service.
I mean, I appreciate your point, although I kind of don't know that counts as. I mean, what would your life be like without free food is not really the next question that I want to ask you. What would your life be like without that fellowship? Because I was trying to remember where I was yesterday when someone was talking about how hard it is to meet people and how hard it is to make friends. And actually, church is a wonderful, almost a literal example of a place where you do come together, where you congregate.
This is a good point. I actually met my wife in church.
So food, wife.
Yeah.
This is a pretty good list, actually. I'm trying to think what else might be. Unless they do the opposite of the collection and you come away richer than you went in, you'd have gone for the perfect hat trick. Talk to me about the inner life, if you would, briefly. What it brings you that you don't find anywhere else.
So I believe that God can only be revealed. You have to first show an interest, and you have to go on your own personal journey to find out, what does God want from me as an individual? And when you begin on that journey, I think it's something so precious that no one can take it away from you, because you've done your own study and you've formed a relationship with God.
Did you hear that clip from the Archbishop a moment ago?
I did, yeah.
It was. I'd never thought of it like that before, but you clearly had that idea that you could sort of have the knowledge all your life, but until you encountered somebody who lived it, which was a phrase I'd heard but not fully understood, until you encountered someone who'd actually lived it, it wouldn't make sense in quite the same way. I think Smartest Giant was Julia Donaldson, actually, so covering a lot of ground today. Unami, thank you. God bless. Take care. Have a listen to this, and then I'll tell you what's wrong with it, okay? So this is an MP, I think, in Uxbridge called Steve Tuckwell, launching quite an odd campaign.
Hi everyone, I'm here in Uxbridge Town Centre and I'm campaigning to bring a fish and chip shop here to the centre of Uxbridge, and I need your support to help the campaign. Here's the thing, there isn't a fish and chip shop in the centre of Uxbridge. There is on the outskirts, there is in Cowley and there is on St Andrews, but we need to bring one home here to Uxbridge Town Centre. It will support our high street, it will support business, it will help the local economy. So please join my campaign. The more people we get to support this, the more it will attract investment and it will attract business to the centre of Uxbridge. Join the campaign for a fish and chip shop in the centre of Uxbridge.
I mean, I'm all for politics coming to the people, but I watched that yesterday and I thought, what on earth is going on here? And then someone told me it's a data harvesting exercise quite often when politicians do this sort of thing. They get you to sign up to something and it means they've got your email address for future reference. So I thought, oh, fair enough. But then it emerged that this character, Steve Tuckwell, he voted against an application for a fish and chip shop in Uxbridge Town Centre when he was a councillor in 2019. And I just thought that the lack, I just love that. It's like, so today we've got Jonathan Gullis going on Sky News to complain about Labour politicians not voting for the Rwanda bill and being reminded by, I nearly said rewinded, being reminded by Sophie Ridge that he didn't vote for it himself. Is there something in the water? Oh no, that was the first hour. Literally there is something very strange going on. So Gullis turns up on Sky News and needs to be reminded that he didn't vote for the bill that he's criticising other people for not voting for. This character launches a campaign to open a fish and chip shop in Uxbridge Town Centre, having forgotten apparently that he voted against an application to open a fish and chip shop in Uxbridge Town Centre just a couple of years ago. What could possibly be stupider than this, do you think, in the annals of British politics? Who could possibly have made an even bigger plum of themselves than Jonathan Gullis and Steve Tuckwell in the last 24 to 48 hours? You'll find out later when Henry Riley joins me in the studio. Back to the conversation about religion, inspired in large part by this week's Full Disclosure with Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury. A conversation. I did so mad stuff as well. We did it in Lambeth Palace, where I've never been before. I've been past it, but I've never been in. And we did it in a crypt, in a sort of downstairs chapel. And he pointed behind where I was sitting and said there used to be a door there, and it was the door through which Anne Boleyn was taken to the boat that would then transfer her to Traitor's Gate at the Tower of London, where she would be beheaded. So it went from Lambeth. I mean, just stuff like that has got nothing to do with religion, but it was just such a, I don't want to say magical, but it was such an extraordinary, no, I'm trying to say extraordinary less. It was such a special encounter for me, the whole thing, the whole conversation, the whole setting, everything about it was lovely. And I really hope you take the time to listen to it, even if you're finding this conversation about religion slightly hard to stomach, as at least three of you are, judging from my inbox. 11:41 is the time. Stuart's in Gateshead. Stuart, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Nice to talk to you. I'm a first-time caller.
What would you, if you were opening a fish and chip shop in Uxbridge, what would you call it?
Expensive.
Yeah, very good. That'll do. You're right. You don't get much change out of 20 quid down here now, Stuart, for a cod and chips and mustard.
It's a tenner up north, mate.
That's a reason to move. Anyway, back to Jesus.
Yes. So what do I get out of it?
Yes.
Well, I suppose he was a fisher of men, so there's a link for you. I think for me, I'm a convert to Catholicism, but I suffer from a lot of doubt, so I'm not one of these full-on kind of people. I tend to look at it from a philosophical perspective, but I did end up in the Catholic Church. But I also have a couple of foots. I've got a foot in Buddhism, which I'm also very open to some of their teachings, and I talk to an Islamic mate every Friday because that's his holy day, and we have a chat. So for me, it gives us... personally, it helps me get peace, but more importantly, it helps me forgive.
That is helpful.
So forgiveness is not just forgiving other people; it's also forgiving yourself.
Yes.
So the peace and forgiveness thing, and I think because I'm a convert, I've done a lot of reading on the periphery, and there's some excellent people out there who actually, if you listen to them, it sounds very similar to Buddhism. It sounds very similar to Islam. The core calling for to say, well, okay, we're not the center of our own universe. Which unfortunately, if we had more of that, we'd have a much more harmonious kind of life and world. But that's I'm a bit of a dreamer. But
you're not the only one.
Super tramp.
It's not super tramp, is it?
It's got you there, mate.
Yeah,
So anyway, ego is another thing that it doesn't. Dying in the world Catholics, I have some interesting discussions with them because they haven't sort of moved. A lot of them haven't moved on from being a kid.
Yes.
So they haven't looked at peripheral stuff. So from a philosophical kind of thing, if you can get peace and you can forgive people, it's got to be a good thing.
How can there be a negative for that for you?
How can that be a negative, right? So the other thing is, from the Buddhist kind of view, I'm a big fan of Eckhart Tolle. I don't know if you've heard of Eckhart Tolle. He wrote The Power of Now, and he's from the Buddhist tradition.
Yes.
I would recommend that book as well as a Bible or any other or a Torah or any religious text, because there's gold dust everywhere, and the ego is the problem. It's our own self-made manifestation of who we think we are, and that causes immeasurable problems and causes a lack of peace and a lack of forgiveness. So there you go. That's me.
I love that. And also, something occurred to me listening to you, which hadn't occurred to me before in this conversation today, which is that the modern craze for self-help and guidance and these podcasts that are teaching people different ways of... I mean, humanity has an appetite for guidance, and
absolutely,
the way you've described your relationship with religions, plural, sounds incredibly healthy, but of course some very unhealthy things can step into that space and push people in directions that won't ultimately be helpful.
But the differential, James, is the people that get all the airplay are not religious. They're using religion to control people.
Well, I mean, don't be ridiculous. Donald Trump is selling Bibles for $60 a pop. That's obviously an act of purity.
If you really go to the root cause of the biggest problem we've got at the minute, if you believe that you shouldn't kill anybody, then everybody's wrong, aren't they?
I mean, that is impossible. I mean, St. Augustine was wrestling with that long before we were glint in anybody's eye. Stuart, thank you, mate. That was beautifully put. And I think that's what I wanted today, the way that Justin Welby just does it in such a calm and matter-of-fact way, with no prescription and no I'm better than you, even as a tiny, tiny subtext, or no real self-benefit from it in terms of you're going to forgive me for this because I do that. Just talk about it. This is how it makes my life better. This is how it makes my life better. We could have been talking about yoga or meditation or therapy on a different day, but for Stuart and for many other people, it's religion. It's 11:46.
James O'Brien on LBC.
10 to 12 is the time. Mystery Hour on the way at 12 o'clock, which of course for some people is a religious experience. But before that, there's a story that I have been looking at all week, trying to, not so much, trying to get my head around. Because I find Johnny Mercer a fascinating politician, not necessarily for reasons that he would find flattering. But I don't mean in a bad way. He's quite chaotic. He doesn't seem to have a great ability. I'd rather have politicians like Johnny Mercer than politicians who never say anything, because they're constantly censoring themselves and guarding themselves, and they're being incredibly cautious. That doesn't mean I'd want him to be Prime Minister. I'd quite like cautiousness or caution to be in a Prime Minister's pocket. But for junior ministers, backbenchers, people contributing generally to the gaiety of the nation, I quite like a little bit of unguardedness or chaos, as you could call it. And Johnny Mercer certainly fits into that category. But this week he is in the news for reasons that are both nuanced and fascinating. He has insisted to, or rather revealed to the inquiry into the war in Afghanistan between 2001 and 2021, that he has been told by a serving member of the Special Boat Service that, well, I'll let Henry Riley take up the tale, essentially that war crimes were commonplace among serving British military personnel.
Yes, so that's one of two issues. So just to give you the background of this, James, as you say, this was established in December 2022, the independent inquiry relating to Afghanistan by the MOD, Ministry of Defence, and it's really focusing on 3 years of that conflict between 2010 and 2013, specifically the deployment of British Special Forces. And really it's trying to look at whether there were any extrajudicial killings by the SAS, the SBS, that's the Special Air Service, the Special Boat Service, and whether in some cases there was a thorough enough investigation into how those deaths came about. But as you say, in recent days, it's been dominated, the coverage, by Johnny Mercer. Now, the first thing that he did is he claimed he was told that there was some truth in the allegations of war crimes by special forces. He says that he was told categorically that in some cases that may be true, but he has refused to provide that evidence, crucially the names of the people who told him that, to the inquiry. Now, Johnny Mercer himself, of course, former British Army captain, he actually served himself in Afghanistan. He's now been served with a Section 21 notice by the chair of the inquiry. That essentially means that you can demand evidence from a witness. And I've been speaking with Lord Saville. He's the judge that chaired the long-running Bloody Sunday inquiry, concluded in 2010. And he told me that the minister should hand over the evidence.
If the question to be answered is likely to provide relevant information for the purposes of the inquiry, then it's the right thing to do. I can understand people being reluctant to give their sources, especially if they've promised not to. The short answer is you want to be provided with everything that is relevant to your inquiry. I mean, that's common sense. Good example of it, the present case, because the tribunal chairman has been told that there are these other contacts.
Now, in the past few days, there has been support for Mr. Mercer. It's important to say he's not sort of out on a limb here. Lord Dannett, the former head of the army, has expressed support for him about the right to protect whistleblowers within the army. It is also worth pointing out, by the way, Lord Savile did himself briefly serve in the British Army. Now, Johnny Mercer, as you were alluding to right at the start, James, crucially claimed that a serving member of the SBS told him that he was asked to carry a drop weapon. Now, a drop weapon is a non-NATO weapon that's carried by special forces. It essentially means you plant it on a dead body, someone killed during a mission, to suggest that they posed a threat. Now, the chairman of the inquiry, Sir Charles Haddon-Cave, has said that he needs evidence as to who told Johnny Mercer that, and has said that it constitutes a criminal offence punishable with imprisonment and or a fine if you fail to comply. Now, Lord Savile, who I referenced earlier, he was also a UK Supreme Court Justice, and he told me that prison was a very real possibility.
That is the sanction which is open to a public inquiry if a witness fails to provide answers with no valid excuse. That's all that the person running the inquiry can do if the witness won't provide proper answers to questions.
Now, lastly, James, this will sort of come to a head next week, really, because Johnny Mercer's been given until the 3rd of April, which is Wednesday, to write to the inquiry if he believes it is unreasonable to hand over those names. We have approached Mr. Mercer for a comment. So far, we don't actually, it looks like he still hasn't handed over those names to the inquiry, but crucially, the chair has told him, you need to decide which side you are really on, Mr. Mercer.
It's an extraordinary story. I mean, he could face jail, technically, although I believe a fine is also in the gift of the inquiry.
Yeah, and potentially both, but certainly jail is a... I mean, if the judge and the chair of the inquiry deems it suitable enough to go to prison, then it is a very real possibility, and it would be an extraordinary situation with a serving government minister potentially going to jail. And I suspect, James, there are conversations going on as to how they can have a sort of amicable solution to this, because at the moment it's quite tricky.
I don't know about you, but when I was a young... Well, you still are a young journalist, but when I was a young journalist, it was a conversation you often had in the pub about whether or not you'd go to jail to protect a source. But it hardly ever comes to pass. Mercer, not a journalist, of course, but the principle is similar.
I think the principle is similar, and look, he does have skin in the game here because of his association with the army, particularly in Afghanistan, and I think there is a sense that he may have been told these things and not told to share them, if that makes sense.
Yes,
and
of course it does.
He's being brutally honest in sharing them, but of course by doing so and making such clear allegations regarding drop weapons, also regarding allegations of war crimes, the judge in this respect is also quite right to demand the evidence. So it's a strange situation where both have a degree of merit.
Henry Riley, thank you very much indeed. We've been chronicling today a remarkable 24 hours for political incompetence. We've had a look at the case of Jonathan Gullis, who appeared on Sky News to complain about Labour politicians not voting for the Rwanda bill, and was reminded by Sophie Ridge of that parish that he himself had failed to vote for the Rwanda bill when given an opportunity. We've heard from Steve Tuckwell, who has recorded himself calling for a campaign to launch a fish and chip shop in Uxbridge Town Centre, and apparently forgot that he himself voted against an application for a fish and chip shop in Uxbridge Town Centre. But I believe you may have a winner, albeit with someone who's not technically a proper politician.
Yes, well, this is the actor and singer, I should say, as well, Lawrence Fox.
Yes, don't forget that.
Singer, who is the leader of the Reclaim Party. And as you referenced, James, we've been speaking about Mr. Fox for a few months now, some time. A development in the Mayor of London race. All the candidates will be announced at some point today. Someone we know who is not on the list is going to be Lawrence Fox. Now, you may ask why. If you ask Lawrence Fox, he says he's being cancelled and that Sadiq Khan is trying to prevent him from being on the ballot that paper, which is quite a serious allegation in and of itself.
It would be from a serious person.
Well, London Elects, which is sort of the body that deals with elections, say that is not the case. Rather, the Reclaim Party met with London Elects for the first time on Tuesday, which was less than 24 hours before the close of the nominations deadline. He then did submit his paperwork in time, but upon inspection, the body has said that it contained multiple errors which were too late for Mr. Fox's team to correct. So he did get his nomination papers in on time, but they were so error-filled that
strewn is the word, I believe.
Error-strewn, sorry,
Come on, Henry. This is tabloidese 101.
Yes, sorry. They were unable to accept it, and so we are in a position where Lawrence Fox will not be on the ballot as things stand.
And he's made a big song and dance about announcing that he's not going to be on the ballot.
Yes, and he had a big announcement.
I might call a press conference to announce that I'm not going to be entering Mr. Universe this year. Do you think that would be similarly newsworthy? I've got a big announcement coming. I am not applying to be the next Pope, Henry.
I think it's tricky for Lawrence Fox this, because he did heavily trail this big announcement, which was going to be that he was running for Mayor of London.
Did he really? I was joking.
Yes, no, it was trailed that he did have a sort of big announcement. Which was,
bless his little Nike trainers, which of course he wore at an event where he was encouraging people to boycott Nike.
Yes, I did see a picture of that on Twitter. Yeah. But he's...
It's all right, ignore the music, I always do.
He's essentially, we're in a position where he did make that big announcement, but it's been derailed by the fact his papers aren't in on time.
Oh dear. Thank you very much indeed, Henry Riley. There is one person in the public eye, a sort of journalist, who did betray a source and ended up seeing the source go to jail. Any idea who that might be?
Not off the top of my head.
Isabel Oakeshott is her name. She is the current partner of Richard Tice.
Oh, yes.
And Vicky Price was her source for a story about her ex-husband Chris Hume's speeding ticket. And her and the then editor of the Sunday Times, John Witherow, handed her over to the police. And as a consequence, she got 8 months in jail. There's always a precedent, if you know where to look. It's 12 noon.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Mystery Hour with James O'Brien.
4 minutes after 12, and the final hour of the week that we will spend together. I will be off tomorrow and indeed on Monday, but back with you on Tuesday, so make the most of it. Fill your boots, as it were. Mystery Hour is a bit different from the rest of the week. It's unique in many ways, and I should tell you why. It's not really linked to the news in any way, shape or form. It's largely apolitical. You do most of the work. I just sort of sit here, put my feet up and enjoy the ride. It's eminently simple in that someone rings in with a question, then someone else rings in with an answer. Latterly, of course, there's been a prize, the favourite contribution of the week, my favourite contribution of the week, and management's decision is final, wins a Mystery Hour board game, which is a wonderful new addition to the panoply, to the universe of board game-based fun, and you can find the full terms and conditions for that competition at lbc.co.uk. Phone lines are open, and because we weren't on the phones in the last hour, but in the last quarter of the last hour, it was just Henry and I. It means you've got a better chance until about now, when everyone will go, oh God, it's Mystery Hour, I forgot, and then the phone lines will explode. But if you're really, really quick, you might be able to snuck in. The bar is high, remember, although Jake is in the chair today, and he is not a veteran of Mystery Hour, so you might be able to smuggle through some old nonsense, because he's not that experienced, and Keith isn't paying attention. In which case I'll get very, very cross with them, not with you, in a slightly performative and unconvincing fashion. But the point, 25 years old for the Gruffalo. Sorry, Stephen. There we go. Let's not turn that into a mystery. 25 years old for the Gruffalo. It's a cracker, isn't it? It's probably not my favourite. What's your favourite Julia Donaldson, Axel Scheffler collaboration? I'd probably go for, I'm very fond of Squash and a Squeeze. But what's the one with the whale? Is it the whale and the snail? The whale and the snail. The whale, that's very good as well. But I digress. You can find out more about the board game at mysteryhour.co.uk. In fact, you can buy it there, which is really the main point of me mentioning it. So you ring in, you ask a question, someone else rings in, they answer it. If you are supremely qualified to provide your answer, if, in other words, someone asks a question about toasters, and you, or possibly your grandfather, actually invented the toaster, then you will receive the highest accolade. Oh, Stickman, yeah, good one, Marchie. You will receive the highest accolade available on the radio anywhere in the world. And we've had this checked, and it's true. It's the highest accolade available anywhere in the world. Some radio stations give away money Some of them are in this building. But money doesn't buy you happiness. And as the Beatles famously observed, it can't buy you love. What can buy you both happiness and love is a Ray Liotta, the award that we reserve for the most supremely qualified contributors to Mystery Hour. And you're only going to hear about half a dozen of them a year. But when you do, the earth moves. Shall we crack on? Shall we get going? Lee's in Carlisle. Lee, question or answer?
Hi, James. Question.
Carry on.
I remember about a month ago you mentioned floor polish brought back really strong nostalgic memories, certain smell of floor polish.
Yeah, not very nice ones.
Well, either way...
I was queuing up outside my headmaster's study waiting to get beaten. Thanks for bringing that up, Lee.
Sorry, apologies.
That's all right, mate.
But either way, it got me thinking, why don't we recall smells from dreams? It's always auditory or mainly visual. Rarely, if ever, is it a smell.
Are you sure?
It's such a strong sense.
Yes, it is.
Like it brings back such memories, doesn't it? A perfume or cut grass or cut bread.
Does it? Are you sure it doesn't? I think you're right.
Can you recall?
I'm trying now. Just give me a minute.
Usually like an alarm getting into the dream, or
give me a moment.
Really
just let me take a sec. Let me take a second to myself. Hang on a sec. No, I've got nothing. I'm not. I think you're right. I'm trying to think. If I've not had a. I tell you, I've started riding into work, Lee. I've started coming in on one of those. Have you got them?
I'm not Sigmund Freud, James. By the way.
No, I know you're not. It's not my dreams, but we go. There's a brewery near me. I go past the Fuller's Brewery in Chiswick on my bicycle. Do you have them in Carlisle? The little electric bikes, that electric aided bicycles that you can.
We're still drinking milk from the teat up here, mate. We're not. We're still down the mines, mate.
And I got the smell of the hops from the brewery, and that's precisely the sort of thing that you might expect to pop up in your dreams. And
exactly. Yeah,
I've got nothing. And the biscuits from the sugar beet factory in Kidderminster when I was growing up. I mean, these are redolent, nostalgic memories. So you'd absolutely expect to have them coming from your dreams.
I lived next door to a bakery most of my life until I was about 19.
Lovely
literally right next door. And yes, some of the mornings just cracking the bedroom window open and getting there.
Well, there we go. So why do we not have smells in our dreams? I'm pretty sure we don't. And if it might just be you and me, but it seems unlikely. I think we're probably quite a representative sample. Smells in dreams. Just having quite rightly castigated me for my southern-based biases, you do have the electric bikes in Carlisle.
No.
You don't?
No, I haven't been in the town centre for a while.
No, I'm just checking, because I think when you live in a big city, you think everybody's got everything, but sometimes you can't even get an Uber in some parts of the country. So I just mentioned it here. You can, scan a QR code, hop on a bike, and then it's electric aided and ride it wherever you want. They're not that good value in the great scheme of things, unless you're buying passes and doing. What am I talking about? Let's just crack on with Mystery Hour. Sorry, Lee. John's in Dundee. John, question or answer?
Question, James.
Carry on.
What do you call a female priest? Now, what title do you give a female priest? A male priest is a father.
Yeah.
What title is a female priest?
Reverend.
Is it? Okay.
I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud.
I don't know.
Well, it's not going to be mother, is it? I wouldn't have thought.
No, that was sort of the flippant answer I was going to give myself.
But no, this wouldn't be flippant, because you have a reverend mother in a convent. As Mother Teresa was a mother, but I don't. And one noun would be priestess, wouldn't it? But you don't address a priest as Priest John.
No,
you address him as Father John,
or Father James, or Father. So it's what
we could be here a while if you're going to go through all the names, John.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to. So it's what would you then call the female?
Well, I'm 99% sure it's Reverend, but I can't. I can't take a round of applause for that, actually, because I can't prove it to you. I don't know. You think? Well, I can prove it to you. I've got some on my Twitter. I'm followed by female reverends, and they call themselves Reverend.
Oh well, then. Not sorry.
That'll do. Happy now?
Thank you. Yeah.
Lovely stuff. Round of applause for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ben.
Some people complain when I answer questions, but if you think about it, I can't win the ball game, so there might be a plus side to it. Rajdev is in Twickenham. Rajdev, question or answer?
It's a question, James.
Carry on.
Arachnophobia is commonly regarded as the most common phobia, and
is
many
it?
people.
Where'd you get that from? Where'd you get your figures from? Name your sources.
They haven't got them to hand, unfortunately. You're going to have to take my word on that. a lot of people have effectively a neurological trigger in the brain that the body sees up if they see a spider. So it's a known sort of condition, if you like. My question is, why is it spiders that human beings are largely afraid of, and not other very, very dangerous animals and organisms that we experience, possibly much more dangerous than a spider?
Well, I mean, the most obvious answer, which you've kind of alluded to, is poison, isn't it? They're poison. There's an evolutionary response to poison, I think, isn't it?
Certainly, but there are very well. You're talking about venom rather than poison, I assume.
Yeah, that's all. Crikey, get Rajdev. Well played. I am talking about venom rather than poison. You assume correctly, Rajdev. Well done.
But there are many more venomous creatures on the planet than spiders. I don't think spiders have that many venomous breeds compared to the amount of spiders there are in the world. So that was really my question.
Maybe they were more prevalent then. Maybe just you're more likely to encounter a spider, and therefore exposure becomes your sort of rationale here. What would be your go-to most venomous creature?
Snakes.
People aren't very fond of snakes either, are they? But
no, that's true. But it's not.
And I'm not sure that. I mean, depending on where you were in the world, because I see some hilarious clips online of people putting fake snakes in, and some people run a bloody mile when they think there's a snake near them. So there is anything that can kill you is probably the answer. That there is some sort of evolutionary trigger for anything that can kill you simply by being in the same space as it. Surely.
Well, that was the. Bears, hippopotamuses, crocodiles, they all can kill you, but we don't have that same...
Yeah, but no, they can't really creep up on you, Rajdev.
No, I mean, yeah.
Except, possibly if they were on tiptoes. So why are we hardwired to fear spiders? I don't know what the answer is going to be, other than the fact that spiders are hardwired to kill us. But I mean, if we're going to put them in a hierarchy of why a spider's higher than others, then we'll put it. When I was rat phobic, which I don't think is the technical term, I went through a period of being really rat phobic, and then we actually had rats in a house we lived in ages ago, and I got cured. Not cured, but I no longer live in. If a rat runs across the towpath when I'm walking up the canal, I don't jump into Mrs. O'Brien's arms anymore like I used to do. Mesophobia. Esophobia. Say it again. Why can't you just write it on the screen? Musophobia. I was walking up the road, and a big fat leaf got blown across the doorway of Robert Dias, and I actually screamed out loud. It was incredibly embarrassing. So that is like and a rat, of course, carries poison. You don't need me to tell you that. Bubonic plague. And that must be something inside, like a sense memory, an evolutionary memory, is thinking rat, poison, death. And then just the leaf, just in the corner of your eye, that kind of movement was enough to trigger me. Maybe spiders fit into that kind of category as well. I'll tell you what, you don't get this content anywhere else, do you? Not even with David Attenborough.
Mystery Hour on LBC with James O'Brien.
It's 12:18. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Mystery Hour is underway. Some quibbling over priests and priestesses. I mean, I don't know. I think you call a priest a vicar, but you have priests outside the Catholic Church. It's a descriptive term as much as it is a title. So a female priest in the Anglican community is just known as reverend rather than father. So I don't think you're picking up on a fair criticism there, but if I'm wrong and you're right, I'll correct the record immediately. But I'm pretty sure that Justin Welby would call himself a priest. When was Henry II, Cat? It was before the reference, so that doesn't count, does it? Anyway, on we go. Philip's in Maidstone. Philip, question or answer?
Answer, James.
Carry on, Philip.
It's about the priest.
Oh, flipping heck. Honestly, I thought... Carry on.
My wife is a priest. Technically not a vicar because she doesn't have a church yet.
Okay.
So that you become vicar when you get the church, I think.
I never knew that. You live and learn. You could be opening a right can of worms here, because you're not 100% sure about that, are you?
Right. I'm 99% sure on that. What I am sure on is reverend is a catch-all term.
Yes.
But depending on your tradition, a female priest can answer to father, or mother or reverend.
Have you ever met a father?
What, a lady who will answer to father?
Yeah.
Yeah, my wife will.
What? I mean, but does she call herself that?
She says she's completely easy on whatever you would refer to her. She would refer to herself as Reverend Anthea.
Yeah, that's what I said. But if someone called her father, she's not... Well, all you're telling me, Phil, is that if someone called her father Anthea, she's not going to ignore them.
No, because she said the term, it depends on your tradition.
Abba.
She's not too fussed on the tradition, so she'll answer to any of them.
I think it comes from Abba.
Go on.
No, it's not even a joke. I think, isn't it Abba father in biblical language? Abba, Abbas, Abba? I don't know. I may have just made that up. I don't know. But it may be a gender-neutral term. Don't tell the Daily Mail. They'll be banning Christianity next. Banning priests. All right, qualifications, married to a priest. There's not many fellas can say that. There's not many fellas that can say that, although more than there used to be, Philip.
Absolutely.
Round of applause.
Good.
Do you get a title? Do you get a title?
No, I just get all the jobs.
That's outrageous. A round of applause for Philip, please.
Oh, thank you very much.
So your wife's a vicar, my wife's a saint. Sorry. Zolka's in Hamburg. Zolka, question or answer?
Question, please.
I was quite pleased with that, Zolka, but on we go. What have you got?
It's another smell-related question.
Oh, yes.
I was wondering, why do we have two nostrils? You see, we have two eyes, so we can see in 3D.
Yes.
We have two ears, so we can locate where sound comes from. But these two nostrils are so close together that
do you know what I think? I think what you've done, I think that you have focused entirely upon one function of the nasal passages as opposed to the other one.
You mean breathing?
I do.
But what good is then that we have two of them?
Well, what is in your nostrils?
I don't want to say.
Well, no, not bogies. The other things. The things that the bogies hang on to. What's in your nostrils?
That's hair.
Yes. And what purpose does the hair serve?
To filter the air.
And if you had one massive nostril instead of two little ones, how effective would that filtering process become? I like the way you just tested it. So that must be that must be the reason, no?
I don't know. I was always wondering, because everything that is twice has a specific function on the body.
No, again, you've done it again. You've gone down the wrong road.
Okay.
You don't need two nipples.
I'm not fully convinced. Oh, maybe I have two kids.
But they could take it in turns. So it's just more efficient.
Quite an unexpected turn.
Now, nipples are quite a good example, because nipples are it's more efficient to have two nipples, and it's more efficient to have two nostrils, but it doesn't actually, materially change their function in the way that it does with eyes doubling up and ears doubling up. Eyes and ears and knees and nose, heads, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes. Also, what if one's blocked, the other one works? You see, quite often. Whereas, if your massive mono nostril got blocked, you'd be in a lot more trouble. I'll put it on the board, but I'm more pleased than you are with my answer, Zolka.
Yes, I'm not fully convinced.
I sense that.
Halfway.
I sense that. Do you know, an opportunity we missed? Abba is indeed the Hebrew word for father, Aramaic, I think, word for father. So with you and your splendid name, from Abba to Zolka, we literally, in the space of two phone calls, we went from A to Z. Look at that. That doesn't happen very often on the programme. Zolka, have a lovely weekend. 24 minutes after 12. Head, shoulders, knees and toes, head, shoulders. So these are all doubles, you see. And eyes and ears and, yeah. Assad's in Ealing. Assad, you've only got one head at the moment, depending on the state of the British waterways, but that was covered in the first hour. Question or answer, Assad in Ealing?
I have a question, James.
Carry on.
Okay, my question is about fruit. I really enjoy eating fruit.
I was in a pub the other day, Assad, in Wimbledon.
Yeah.
And I had a gig in the theatre, the new Wimbledon Theatre, where I was incredibly well looked after. So thank you to everybody involved in the Wimbledon Literary Festival. But that's a very loud indicator you've got there.
I beg your pardon.
That's all right. You can't control it. It's not your fault. You can hardly put it. It's not got a volume control. So I was in a pub. It was in the bottom of the travel lodge, like one of those pubs in the bottom of a hotel. And I had a mineral water, a fizzy mineral water, because I had an event, and I don't like to have a proper drink before an event. And guess what happened after I ordered my fizzy water, and she brought it, and she said, "Would you like ice?" And I said, "No." And at the end of that exchange, she said, "Would you like some fruit?"
Oh.
Has that ever happened to you in a pub?
No, never happened.
Would you like some fruit? And I had to double check. I said, "Would I like?" I said, "Pardon?" She said, "Would you like some fruit?" And I said, "Fruit?" And she goes, "Yes, fruit." I said, "No, I'm trying to give it up." But why? I've never had that before in my life. I don't know whether it was a particular promotion that was going on in that particular chain or that particular branch, or whether she was just a gardener and she'd brought in some of her own fruit. So anyway, I like fruit as well, although you reminded me that I had turned it down the last time I was offered some by someone I'd never met before. What do you want to know about fruit, Assad?
Okay, so what's your favourite fruit, James?
That's not a mystery hour question.
No, but that will help me to...
Oh, I see. Pineapple.
Okay, so sometimes you have a pineapple and it tastes really nice and juicy, and the flavour is just really good.
Yeah.
Sometimes
I had one this morning. Well, not a whole one, that would be weird, but I had a little tub of it, yeah.
But then on other occasions, you may eat a pineapple, and even though it's ripe and in season, it won't have that same taste.
Pineapples are quite a bad example for your theory, aren't they?
Why?
Well, I've never had a bad pineapple.
Oh, you do get soury pineapples.
Yes, I quite like that, though. I quite like a sour. I think what you want really to make things work is a pear.
Okay, let's go with a pear.
Or a melon.
Okay.
A melon.
Right, melon, pear, strawberry.
It's strawberry. Strawberry's the best, actually, because they can be of equal softness, and some of them just go there, and others just don't. Strawberry, go on.
Okay, so regardless of the taste, whether you find it sour or just juicy or sweet,
yes,
will it have the same nutritional value?
Blimey.
So if I eat, because I eat fruit every day in the evening,
yes,
and even if the fruit doesn't taste very good, I will eat it because I'm thinking that it's doing me good. It has a lot of vitamins.
Well, it's got the fibre amount in it is going to be the same, isn't it?
Right, that's one part of the nutritional value of the fruit, right? How about, does it have this? Will a bad tasting strawberry have the same nutritional value, minerals, vitamins, fibre, as a really nice...
Give or take it will. Give or take it will. But
I mean, unless you can qualify that with your qualifications, I would like to have an answer from someone with the required knowledge for me to have that confidence.
Okay.
What do you think?
I think I might have made a bit of a fool of myself with the fruit question, I said.
Why?
Well, some people are suggesting that she might have been offering me a slice of something to go in my drink.
Okay. I possibly couldn't comment about those.
But no one's ever said that to me before. No one's ever said, "Would you like some fruit? Would you like a slice of lemon? Or would you like..."
No, you don't do that. You don't, particularly in the UK. It's
never
not
said
very
you want
common,
some fruit. And also, I'd already got my drink. Of course that's what she wasn't. If I was just, "Oh yes, please, I'd love an apple." What would she have done? Or a pineapple, actually, to you, or a handful of blueberries. Do you think that's what she meant? She meant lemon or lime in my water?
Perhaps.
You don't care. You just want to know about the nutritional value, don't you?
I want someone to phone up with the answer.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's give him a chance. I'll stop. Oh dear. So, would you like some fruit? Yes, please. I have a banana. And she just stuck a banana in my mineral water. Chris is in Manchester. Chris, question or answer?
It's a question, please, James.
Carry on.
On behalf of my son Harry, who's next to me, he's been trying to get me to call him for years.
Hello,
Harry.
Harry.
He's on his half term now.
Lovely
James
stuff.
says hello. Hi, he says.
Hello.
So he wants to know, why are roses synonymous with Valentine's Day? Like, why is it roses that are typically given?
I like that. I mean, I think it's a bit chicken and egg. I think roses have been linked with love forever.
Well, not forever.
Pretty much. And then Valentine. I think I don't know. I don't know. And because it's Harry. If it was you, I'd probably try and make something up and pass it off as the truth. But seeing as Harry,
looking convinced.
I'm not going to get anything past Harry, am I? Let's not mess about here. He knows what's what. He knows nonsense when he hears it. I bet he knew exactly what that barmaid meant when she offered me some fruit. There's no doubt at all in his mind. He wouldn't have. Okay, why are roses and romance linked? Because if we know why roses and romance are linked, we know why roses and Valentine's Day are linked as well. Chris and Harry. You're on the list. All right, how old is Harry?
He's 10.
Top man.
Mystery Hour with James O'Brien. This is LBC.
It is 12:33 and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where the Mystery Hour continues. Why do we not smell in dreams? What's the evolutionary explanation for the arachnophobia being, we believe, the most common phobia of them all? Why do we have two nostrils? I thought I'd done that satisfactorily, but Zolka was gloriously unimpressed, albeit politely. Fruit. Does the nutritional value of fruit change much according to how delicious it is? That was basically the question. So it's going to be something to do with sugar-fibre ratios. I'd be surprised if we get an answer to that. And why are roses associated with romance? All of those. Remember that my favourite contribution of the week wins a Mystery Hour board game. Although Chris has already played the 10-year-old son card. You see, you think I don't know what you're playing at, Chris. I know it wasn't Harry's idea. He'd be far too honourable for that kind of shenanigans. But you thought your likelihood, your chances of winning the Mystery Hour board game would increase a bit if old Harry was in the car alongside you when you rang in for... And you may well be right, because I am a sucker. Penny is in Norwich. Lovely part of the world. Penny, question or answer?
Answer, James.
Carry on, Penny.
Thanks, and hello.
Hello.
And I don't have a son, but I've got a fat cat called Pig who is enthusiastically listening.
Okay, that's on the list.
The spiders. I did my thesis at college on why we have arachnophobia.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm sure there's a PhD out there that can top this, because it was a college thesis.
That's
but
all right.
it is a learned behaviour.
Is it?
It is, yeah. And actually, it's not the most common. The most common phobia is heights.
Yeah, fair enough.
We're scared of spiders because of the way they move. We don't like them because they move hydraulically.
And they move fast.
They move fast. Also, the survey I did, I equalised the size of spiders and showed them to people and asked them which ones they were most scared of. And the most venomous ones actually come lower. It's the big, black, hairy ones that people don't like.
So there
And
it
of
is.
course, they are venomous. But we get bitten by snakes a lot more a year. 300,000 snake bites a year. Far more dangerous.
Worldwide, not in Norwich.
No, not in Norwich.
No.
We've only got adders in Norwich, and I've never actually seen one.
No.
Yeah. So
that's
there
it
you go.
then. So they're weird and spidey, and that's why we don't like them.
Yeah, I mean, they're eight-legged. They are venomous.
Also, they can
but,
appear
you know,
anywhere, can't they? What with their webs and everything, they can just sort of dangle down in front of you while you're minding your. Is there one in here at the moment? They could have come from.
yeah.
So that kind of thing is going to train you to be scared next time something moves into your.
Exactly. They
field
move
of
very
vision.
fast. They don't like us. If people are scared of them and you're really bothered about them, then Lemon Pledge is a very good, sorry, brand name, but it's
all
a very good off-putter of spiders.
Is it really?
That's what they used in arachnophobia to herd the spiders, because they were real spiders.
You live and learn. Qualifications did a thesis on it in college.
Yeah.
I like that. So Razdev's premise was wrong, really.
Well, wrong about it being the most common.
No, but wrong about it
phobia.
being evolutionary as well, although it may have been me that said that. Maybe it wasn't him. But
Well, I mean, there is an evolutionary aspect to every fear, but most of it's actually inherited from the reactions of the people around us as we grow up, because they're so scared of spiders.
that's probably certain. If your mum was terrified of spiders, you probably are too.
Absolutely.
Whereas your dad had to go and get them out of the bath and throw them out of the window. Or just squish them while pretending to throw them out.
Oh,
the
don't
window.
squish them.
No,
They kill millions of insects a year.
I wouldn't do that. Some
Yeah,
people
they're
might squish
wonderful.
them while pretending to throw them out the window. So they might do that. Round of applause for Penny, please, Keith. Well played, Penny. 12:37. Alex is in Burnham, in Buckinghamshire. Not the other ones. Question or answer?
It's a question, James.
Carry on.
Why do we say quid? You know, when we're talking about pounds, when we're saying we're buying something, it only costs a couple quid. Why do we say quid? Where did that come from?
I
It's a
think
good question, isn't it?
It's all right. It's all right, but I think it's a bit. I think it's just another word for. I think if you go back 400 years or more, it's just a word for a coin. A type of coin would be a quid, and for some reason it's stuck.
Oh, okay.
Especially as a pound for most of our lot. How old are you?
I'm 26.
Well, so you never knew this, but it used to not even be a coin. A quid. A quid used to be a paper. It used to be a note when I was your age? Not when I was
Yeah,
your
I've got
age.
one at home.
Have you got one? God, it made me feel. Someone
Yeah.
used to send me pound notes. There was a lovely lady. I can't remember why, but she used to send me. I think she sent me pound notes so I'd pay more attention to whatever else was in the envelope. But it didn't really work. I just used to take the pound note out and quick quid. Yeah, I think. Well, someone else will know, but I think it will just be the word for a coin back in the day, so it became the plural would become 10 quid. But it is a good question, and it's a word we use, all of us almost probably use every single day without ever thinking about where it comes from. So we like
I
that.
thought about it the other day and just thought, yeah.
Quid. I'll ask James. 12:38 is the time. No, good work. Why do we call a pound a quid? Why do we associate roses with romance? How much effect... Well, is there any relationship between flavour and nutritional value of fruit? Why do we have two nostrils? We've done the spiders, we've done the priest. And why don't we smell in our dreams? Carl is in Prescott. Carl, question or answer?
It's a question, please, James.
Carry on.
Right, I collect watches. Got a few mechanical ones, but most of them are battery powered.
Okay.
When I put them in storage, I don't wear them.
Yeah.
If I pull the crown out, does the battery last longer?
What's the crown?
The bit you spin around to set the time.
Ah. Whoa. That's a bit niche.
I know, I'm sick of buying batteries.
I mean, no, but you're the watch collector. Why are you asking me? You should know this. You're the kind of person who should ring in to answer this question, not ring in to ask it.
I'm not that technically into them, just like the look of them, so...
Do the crowns always come out?
Yeah.
Is that because mine fell out the other day? I took it to the bloke in Piccadilly Circus and he put a new one in. And he's done a really nice job, actually. Why would it? Why would the battery stop working? Can't you tell? Oh, because you haven't got... Well, can't you just tell? Can't you do a little test? It'd only take 5 minutes.
I can't test the power of the battery if I just pull it out, can I? It takes ages.
Yeah, but if you pull it out and then it stops and then 5 minutes later you go back and the time hasn't changed and the battery's not being used. Have I misunderstood the question? It's like that.
Possibly, I don't know.
It's like the woman in the pub asking me about fruit. Well, so why would you not just pull the arm out and then if it doesn't stop, then the battery's still working?
I'm not too sure if something's going on behind the scenes that I don't know.
Well, nor am I now. But if the battery is working, the hands will move, right?
Yeah.
And if the battery is not working, the hands will not move.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if when you pull the crown out, does that deactivate something in the battery so the energy of the battery doesn't drain?
So the hands might not be moving, but the battery might still be draining, you mean?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, Lord above, this is an odd question, Carl. Can't you ask one of your fellow watch collectors?
I'm not that big. I don't like to have some mad catalogue. I just buy quite a few watches.
I'll find. I mean, who's going to know the answer to this? God, well, actually, quite a lot of people probably would. It breeds enthusiasm. Do you do it for financial reasons?
No, just like collecting. I mean, it's mainly Swatch watches that I've got and a few other different mechanical watches. But
okay, so
I've got quite a few of them.
So you're not doing it because they appreciate in value. They're a very good thing, aren't they? For like, if you're a massive international criminal, watches are quite a good currency to evade the authorities and to money launder and stuff like that. I used to love swatches. I used to have loads of swatches at one point. I had a see-through swatch. What's the rarest?
They've got a lovely range out at the moment that they've done a mashup with Amiga.
Really?
Yeah, and there's like a set of 12, and I really like them. But I've got about 5 of them, and every time I put them away, I think, is the battery going to be there when I come back, or do I leave it running?
Why don't you just take the battery out, Carl?
Because on them watches, they've got like a special battery cover, and I don't want to chip it or anything like that. So
you've got an answer for everything, haven't you?
Sorry.
No, I love it. I think I've been all clever, and every single thing I think of, you've obviously been there first because they're your watches. All right, you're on the list. If you pull the crown out, does it stop the batteries from being used? Does it save the batteries, in other words? Now, I mentioned at the beginning of Mystery Hour this week that Jake was in the chair and that he hadn't done it before. There are two questions that I usually use and I also said that Keith wouldn't be paying attention. There are two questions that I have always used in the past as things that you do never ever ring in with on Mystery Hour. One of them is, why don't you ever see white dog poo? And the other one is, Mia in Victoria, question or answer?
Question, please.
Carry on.
Why do you never ever see baby pigeons?
There it
see
is.
Geese?
There, yeah, you do.
No,
yes,
pigeons.
Yes.
Not
I know.
other birds,
yes.
just pigeons.
I know. Well, you don't see baby robins, do you?
You might.
You don't.
Given the amount of pigeons you see around,
You
you've
don't
never,
see baby
ever
crows. You don't see baby crows, and you don't see baby seagulls.
Is that because their nests are very high up and they don't want them to come down?
Yep. Or not even that high up. They stay in the nest until they can fly, and as soon as they can fly, they look like grown-ups.
I'm not sure that's the correct answer.
Well, it's the only one you're going to get.
Says you.
Well, yes, says me. And my word is law.
Well, I'm not sure about that.
Okay, what's your theory?
I don't have a theory. That's why I'm asking.
Well, you're very condescending about my theory, considering you have no theory. Well, of course that's the answer. You do see, you see adolescent pigeons and you see young pigeons, but you can't tell because we're not experts in aging pigeons. But the reason why you never see a pigeon that can't fly is because it's in the nest. If you wanted to see a baby pigeon, you just have to find a pigeon's nest full of pigeons that can't yet fly. An unfledged pigeon.
Has anyone ever seen a pigeon's nest?
Yes. Next question.
When did you see a pigeon's nest?
17th of April 2017.
Stewart's inquiry.
No Stewart's inquiry at all. I've got a round of applause for me. Thank you, Mia. And there it is. 034560. So, Jake, did you hear that little exchange, or were you busy pretending to be on the phone? The two questions that we never, ever, 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 ever have on Mystery Hour. 12:45 is the time. You don't see dead ones either. We actually did this once. You don't see dead ones either because they'll get picked up very, very quickly by foxes and other predators. But you do. And my inbox, and I've said it on the radio again, so it's going to happen again, for about a week afterwards, every time someone saw a dead pigeon, they sent me a picture of it. I don't want to see your pictures of dead pigeons. A, I'm not weird, and B, when you've seen one dead pigeon, you've seen them all.
Mystery Hour on LBC with James O'Brien.
12:49 is the time. Some breaking news for you. They have run out of the cheese-flavoured hot cross buns in Wimbledon's Morrison's. They're probably dropping them in drinks. No, it doesn't work. Thank you, Joe, for that. I don't know why we didn't put Yvonne's story in the news, the fact that they are actually delicious, although the Daily Telegraph managed to find some self-professed Christian to complain about them. Because that's what Jesus would want. If Jesus was with us today, he'd be looking at some of the situations in the world and he'd be thinking to himself, I hope that a Christian organisation takes some time out of their busy schedule to complain about Morrison's selling cheese-flavoured No, it's hot cross bun-flavoured cheese, not cheese-flavoured hot cross buns. Don't be disgusting. It's hot cross bun-flavoured cheese, which Morrison's currently has for sale, but not, I stress, in Wimbledon, although I have to tell you that came in at 12:33. So the situation may have been rectified in the last 17 minutes. It's practically the travel news, this, but with hot cross bun-flavoured cheese instead. Zoe's in Fife. Question or answer, Zoe?
It's a question, James.
Carry on, Zoe.
Okay. Why is it that when you're looking at, say, an island, across water...
Is it in the stream? An island in the stream?
An island, yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It can look closer or further away on different days.
The same island?
The same island, yeah. I grew up opposite the Isle of May in Fife,
yes.
And it was a view out my bedroom window. And depending on the day, it would look it would just look closer or further away.
That's interesting.
And the same when I remember having a holiday in Venice, and from Murano, Venice looked closer or further away. From one day to another.
Well, I mean, would it not just be the clarity, like the humidity or the?
It could be the humidity, but I've got a strong feeling it's more complicated than that.
Have you really? What, like the curvature of the Earth or something like that?
It could be It could be, but I'd really like to know.
It's quite near. What if it's just you?
It's definitely not me.
How do you know?
Because I've always lived on the coast. And at the moment, I live in Tayport, which is just across the Tay from Dundee and Broughty Ferry, and it looks different on different days. And people comment on it. People say on the coast.
Looks further away.
Okay,
I like that. That's a great question. I hope we've got time to get you an answer. So islands. So a little bit of me there thought we might be going down. Do you remember when they were trying to explain to Father Dougal in Father Ted why the cows looked further away and nearer? Did you ever see that episode?
I did not see that particular episode.
Just as well, actually, to be honest, because that was quite an insulting thing to be reminded of by your question. But as it turned out, your question wasn't anything like that at all and was perfectly valid. And hopefully we will get an answer. I will actually accept pictures of baby birds. Those are gorgeous little robins. So you do see them. In fact, you do see baby pigeons, but you don't know that they're baby pigeons because you don't know enough about pigeons to know that pigeon is actually technically a baby. If it can fly, Jake, you're in so much trouble for putting that question through. Seriously, I don't know what you're laughing about, Keith. You're supposed to be the gatekeeper. Keith is another Keith. I'm being haunted. This one's in Streatham Hill. Keith, question or answer?
Good afternoon, James. It's an answer for you.
How old are you, Keith?
56.
Yeah, fair enough. Carry on. No, we're just always on the lookout for very young Keiths on the programme. So
yeah, I'm not one of those, I'm afraid.
The world's young. What's the youngest we ever found? We found a very young. Anyway, quickly.
We found one at 13, I think.
I think we did find a 13-year-old Keith, didn't we? It's an amazing achievement.
It's a Scottish connection,
I think you're right. I think they're different. They do things differently there. Watches,
yes. The short answer to his question is, it depends on the watch.
Spoil sport.
But yes. I do know the particular watches that he's referring to. They're very nice.
Yes.
A great collaboration that they've done.
Yes.
And that, by pulling the crown out, will not work.
Oh.
What happens is when you pull the crown out, it engages a lever,
yes,
which acts as a brake on one of the wheels.
Right.
So the battery is still supplying the power to the rotor and
yes,
through the stator, and it's still pumping the power through, and it's not going to affect the length of the time of the battery.
So it's going to run down at the normal speed?
Yes, it would. 2 to 3 years, you'd probably get a life out of the battery on that.
Love it.
There are a few watches that when you pull the crown out, it cuts off the electrical supply to the cell. So that can happen, but it's very few.
And definitely not on the ones that
definitely not on the ones he's collecting.
That Carl was
but
asking.
Really, he should leave the battery in, let them run because the oil inside is flowing round, rather than just getting them to seize up over years. He should just let the batteries run things, but make sure he changes it when it stops in the 2 to 3 years' time.
Okay.
Because after that, the cells can leak and destroy the insides of the watch.
Qualifications?
Horologist to the stars, 40 years.
That'll do nicely. Horologist to the stars. Do you have a shop, or do you only do
I don't know. I work
visits?
for Swiss companies, and
You're a hardcore horologist, aren't you? I can tell. You're being modest about your. No, you don't. I mean, you seriously
I've
are.
a couple of your horology questions before.
I know you have. I know
from Bond Street. Yeah,
I know.
Yeah.
Well, but you were based in Bond Street. We're going back a while now. You used to email me a lot.
We are. I did, yes.
I don't even read my emails anymore because I get so many. That's not me being Billy Big Bananas. That's just it's impossible to keep track.
Immensely.
So I've got to look at that. Round of applause for Keith. Great work.
Thank you.
Great. I had a question for you once, and I thought next time he rings in or next time he emails me, I'll ask you, and I've completely forgotten what it was.
It's always the way.
It is, isn't it? I'll remember the minute that the show ends today, or probably the minute I say thank you, Keith. Goodbye. Neil is in. Neil Rankin in Tower Hamlets. Neil Rankin, as you will know, is one of the country's leading chefs, which means that you are probably here to answer the
fruity one.
The fruit question. How are you, Neil?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Very well indeed. What have you got?
So I suppose there's two answers to this. One, the ripeness of it could make a difference, but very small difference because they'll be picked very closely together.
Yes.
Timeline. So I wouldn't think it would significantly be different because they'll be made in the same place, the same sort of soil, same weather.
Yeah.
But taste difference generally means that it could be two things. One, a really high water content, which means that there is less nutrients.
Yes.
Or it's bad soil or bad sunlight or bad climate that they've been growing in, which would mean less nutrients all around. So it is a really good indicator of nutrients, is flavour.
Oh, okay. So yes and no, really, is your answer.
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, ripe if it's ripe, but he said it wasn't to do with ripeness. So if it feels fully ripe and it doesn't taste as good, like if you buy an expensive tomato, it will taste really good. If you buy very cheap tomato, which is grown with a really high yield and lots of things within the same amount of soil, then it will have less nutrients, thus less flavour.
It's really that simple. So a tasteless tomato is it really just spread the same amount of nutrients far too thinly.
Yeah, it's actually interesting. If you think about a really expensive tomato, usually has more nutrients in it than a smaller one. So, like a value tomato.
Yes,
so
of course.
A lot of them are actually the same price per amount of tomatoiness.
So it's a brilliant question then.
Yeah, it's quite a good question.
I like that a lot. Right, qualifications?
Chef and really nerdy about fruit and vegetables recently on Instagram. So I did a lot of research.
I love it. Round of applause for Neil, please. Look at that. I was trying to think of something then. I tasted something the other day that was just obscenely delicious. And it was something, it wasn't a tomato, but it was something that you'd eat all the time and you suddenly realise you can actually have. I'll tell you what it was. It was nothing to do with fruit or vegetables. I was at the Maids of Honour tea shop in Kew. And every single thing they serve in the Maids of Honour tea shop is like the perfection of that thing. Whether it's a cucumber sandwich or a scone or a chocolate eclair. You know, Sheila, when you eat a chocolate eclair, normally the cream all squeezes out the edge. You know, a proper chocolate eclair shouldn't do that.
Doesn't happen. Yeah.
The Maids of Honour tea shop in Kew, there
I don't know. I should go there. I live quite near there.
Oh, it's extraordinary.
Oh, I'm on my way.
The pie, the quiche, everything. You know, with the quiche, the pastry would normally be... Oh, anyway. Joanna's in Bromley. Joanna, question or answer?
It's an answer, James.
Carry on.
And embarrassingly, it's the answer to the dream question. Can you smell in your dream?
Yes.
I had a dream just last week that the doctor refused to treat me because I had incredibly smelly feet.
Oh.
And I could smell how disgusting they were in my dream. And I hasten to add, my feet are not smelly.
Well, I never. Had you bought any hot cross bun flavoured cheese from Morrison's recently?
I can only think that would make things worse.
Yes, so but I'm wondering if there was anything smelly in your room at the time and the dream caught up with the sense, because that happens sometimes.
My daughter thought it was an anxiety dream.
Yeah, it certainly is. Right, qualifications. I smelt feet in my dreams. That's a first.
Yes. That's it.
That's got you a round of applause, China. I don't know what you're going to do with it. I hope you feel better soon. Who's my favourite? I think I'm going to give it to Keith, the horologist, partly out of loyalty reasons, because he has been on board forever, and I used to love his emails, and because I don't really read emails anymore, it's nice to make contact with him. And he's helped me with many, many other things in the past, so in a way it's a legacy award of the Mystery Hour board game this week. Also, keeping the Keith alive. That's it from me for another day. We'll be doing it all again on Tuesday morning from 10. I am not obviously, but I'm telling you now that I'm taking Good Friday and Easter Monday off. If you missed any of today's show, you can listen back on Catch Up on Global Player, the official LBC app, where you can also pause and rewind live radio. Download it now for free from your app store, or head to globalplayer.com, 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 or head to globalplayer.